Call to order the City of Dunnellon City Council Workshop, September 8th, 2021. It is now 5:33 p.m. Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would you all continue to stay up? Is there anyone in the audience that would like to say a prayer? Tom? Thank you.
Let us pray. Father God, in the name of Jesus, we thank you for your goodness, your grace, and your mercy. Father, we thank you for the blessings you bestow upon this city, and Father, we pray in great anticipation of those who are yet to come. Father, I pray your blessing over this meeting this evening in the name of Jesus. I pray, Lord, for unity and harmony within the council, and for all of us in attendance, Lord, let us use our gifts, our talents to bless this city of Dunnellon as well, for the betterment of all who live here. In Jesus' name, I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you very much. Please be seated. Ms. Odom, we're ready for roll call, please.
Mayor White,
Present.
Vice Mayor Hanchard. Here. Councilwoman Williams just stepped out of the room for a moment.
She's here right now.
She's here, okay. Councilwoman Kenny. Here. Councilwoman Covish. Present. Jan Smith, Finance Officer. Here. Chief McQuay. Sergeant Yawkes, Lieutenant Yawkes is here. Troy Slattery, Public Works.
Here.
Michelle Leonard, Assistant Clerk. Here. City Attorney Andrew Hand.
I'm here.
The agenda for this meeting was posted on the city's website and City Hall bulletin board on Wednesday, September 1st, 2021. The agenda was amended on September 2nd to add back up to number 10 and again on September 7th to note changes to item number 5.
Okay, very well. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few odds and ends to help facilitate the meeting. Anyone who would like to speak in the audience, please sign up on the sign-up sheet in the lobby. Those that sign up will be asked to speak first or allowed to speak first. Those that haven't signed up, if you decide to speak when everybody has finished who did sign up, you still will be asked, you'll be given the opportunity to speak. If you do speak, you will be given 3 minutes to make your point. Please also give your name and address. Speak into the microphone, particularly if you have a mask on. These meetings are recorded and there's people actually listening on Zoom. It's very important to speak loudly and clearly into the microphone. If you have anything on you right now that might ring or buzz, cell phone, this is an opportunity to turn them off. If you have reason that you want to talk to your neighbor, please leave the building and have your conversation. It is quite remarkable up here at the dais. You can hear conversations quite easily. Those that are on the agenda tonight that are to give presentations, you will be asked to limit your presentation to 10 minutes. We have 20 items on this workshop, so you can do the math. If we do 10 minutes per item, that's 200 minutes, which means we have a 3.5-hour workshop looking in front of us. So I will be watching the time a little more closely than normal tonight because of how heavy our workshop is. Council, just a little reminder to us that we can help ourselves by, when we want to make comments, stay to the point, don't meander. Try to be cognizant of the audience that's here, staff that's here, and ourselves that are here, and the length of time we're here. Before we get started, I would like to acknowledge Commissioner Kathy Bryant is in the audience. Welcome, Kathy, Commissioner.
Thank you.
You're always welcome here, and we appreciate it when you come.
Good to be here.
Okay, with that said, we're going to go to the agenda item.
If I can, just one quick second. I know we just said we'd be short, and I promise we will be, but Mandy, can you please tell the audience about the loss that our city employee has had and ask for their prayers for our family member?
Yes. Julie Danowski, who is our records clerk, her husband passed away on Sunday. So she will be out the rest of this week and possibly next week.
Very, very tragic news that hits to the core. When you hear about these things and read about them, it's one thing. When they're that close to home, you realize there's some serious things going on outside. This is a workshop. What a workshop basically means for those of you that may not be familiar with how city government runs, a workshop is a discussion. You have the opportunity to make points, suggestions to council. You will hear council deliberate and discuss the things that are on the agenda. No vote can be taken at a workshop. From the workshop, we put our agenda together for the following meeting, which is 5 days later. You will have actually 2 opportunities to speak tonight, at the beginning of the workshop and at the end of the workshop. We ask you to keep it to 3 minutes. That means you will actually have 6 minutes to speak. There are no parameters by which you can speak on any subject you want to speak. You want to speak to something that's on the agenda, you can. If you want to speak to something new, different, or something you want to bring to our attention, this is the time to do it. If I have also a second chance to speak at the end of the meeting, you can make comments after you've listened to council discussion and give your points of view. Whether you agree, disagree, that's the good time to do it. So with that said, Ms. Odom, do we have anybody signed up to speak?
Yes, and I'll just note that I have the sign-in sheet for the beginning of the meeting. We left the sign-in sheet for public comments at the end of the meeting on the podium, in case anyone wants to sign up to speak at the end of the meeting. I have signed up Mr. Ron McAndrew. Would you like to go ahead and speak?
Mayor, members, should I use the podium?
Yes, please, your name and address, sir.
Thank you. I'm speaking to number 9 on your agenda, Mr. Mayor, members of the council.
Address?
20390, the Granada.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've recently filed an application for consideration as a member of the Firefighter and Police Officer Pension Board of Trustees. And since I will not be able to stay here for the rest of the meeting this evening, I thought I would offer myself up to you to any possible questions you might have that resulted from my application.
I'm pretty sure you're qualified, being your background in law enforcement in your other life. So I'm sure you've done these 1 or 2 times.
Mr. McAndrew, I have looked at your resume, and you're more than qualified with your background. You've also served, I understand, on council previously,
I have.
and you've lived in the city a long time, so I cannot think of a better candidate to take this position. Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you
I
very
had an
much.
opportunity to review too. Very impressive, and I think you're more than qualified.
Thank you, ma'am.
And I concur with the rest of the council.
Thank you, ma'am.
And also, I would like to add that, knowing your background also, we are proud to have you join up. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it.
Okay, Ms. Odom, anyone else signed up?
Yes, I have David Koger.
Mr. Koger, name and address, please.
My name is David Coger. I live at 11983 Palmetto Way, and that's directly across the street from the Blue Run Park. And it was better than a year ago that we were up here talking about the activity in the river and people accessing the river through the biodetention area. And the good news is some action did happen. We got the water line moved, and 90% of the kids jumping off the bridge are no longer doing that. However, the access to the river through the biodetention area has increased this summer to the point that you now have large areas of bare spots down adjacent to the river where people are coming down and putting their blankets and tilling grass. There is a dedicated path to the river that is no longer filtering water that's supposed to be filtered. Being a retired road and bridge engineer, a bioretention area is designed to filter excess wastewater runoff from the stormwater system before it enters a critical or sensitive waterway. Now, with all the foot traffic we are allowing to go through that area, it is destroying that. And since I live next door to it, it's creating a lot of silt and buildup underneath my dock. And the county promised to do two things: fix the fence on the bridge and the water line. And there was also talk about an additional fence to go from tie-in at the end of the bridge and come over tie into that property. Recently, last month, I spoke with Jim Couillard about that, and Jim said, send him an email. I sent him an email. He sent me an email back saying, well, that's city property. We're not doing anything about it. So I would like to remind the city council members that biodetention area, there is a section of that area, a 50-foot easement from Palmetto Way to the river is dedicated as park. The rest of that is dedicated as a bioretention area. Now, the bioretention area is there to serve as a mitigation for the stormwater runoff for County Road 484, which is a county piece of property. Any fence to be put up that's going to be effective has to tie into the existing fence on the bridge, and therefore it has to start with the county. So if you guys could call who you need to at the county, or man, if you could make note of this and say, talk to Public Works. It's been more than a year now, and that area is getting taken care of. Last time I talked to Southwest Florida Water Management District, they were very adamant that that area is not for foot traffic. It's not for access to the river. It needs to be protected. We need to do something about it.
Thank you very much.
And I will speak when we get to individual items, we're going to have a chance to talk again, or all the way at the end.
Right at the end, sir.
I got 58. I'll go ahead and do it now. Item 14, as far as the park hours for the Blue Run Park, you guys suggest from 6 p.m. until dusk. I would like to remind you that dusk in June and July is close to 10 o'clock. That's a little late. And dusk is defined as that portion between sunset and pitch dark. So I don't think we want people out there swimming in the river with boats going by when it's getting close to pitch dark. I would suggest if you're going to, I guess you're dead set on allowing people to swim there, change that from dusk to sunset. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Odom?
Paula Koger.
Is the clock set? Is the clock set?
My name is Paula Koger. I live at 11983 Palmetto Way. I live with David, my husband. So I wanted to thank you for bringing all this up, Bill, and all the things. I mean, it's awesome because we've lived here 11 years and there's been a sign in Blue Run that said no swimming. And everybody swims there. And so for somebody to have the integrity to finally bring it to an enforceable point is amazing. And I very much welcome that. I just wanted to compare for you what it's like where they're swimming in Blue Run versus where they're swimming coming down that hill. And that is when they come down the hill, what you get is the real screamers. You know, the real dog man, the guy that's going to make himself heard They bring footballs and a language that you would not enjoy. Well, maybe you would, but it is brutal how they talk and how they bring loud music. And so my big concern, and they bring huge floats and lay on them while they drink and smoke. And there's a no alcohol on the river thing, you know. So I'm just so glad to have all this come to be heard and to be taken care of. Because the most important thing with anything that's a rule, for me, is how do you get it to be enforced? Enforcement is the ticket here. What do you do? Every time there's somebody swimming in the river, do you call the cop? I mean, we could wear out our cops real fast. And I've always wondered how in the world that blue run could just be made so, okay, you're going in, you have to either pay, you pay money, because the only reason they would go in would be to swim. If they're coming out, they could get out, you know, using a push gate that went that way. But the thing is, it's just becomes very chaotic to try to enforce these things, to try to get the little boys that are yelling, I won't say the word, you know the word I'm talking about, as mean and hateful as they can. They yell it for 10, 12, 13 times every time they climb that tree. And it's an insult to have to listen to that.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Ms. Odom?
Bill Vibert?
You know the drill, name and address.
I thought might be a good idea. Bill Vibert, 9552 Southwest 192nd Court Road. When we talk about the Rainbow River, sometimes we look at it from an isolation, that we're in Dunnellon, like Dorothy in the movie, we don't know what's beyond us. But I thought I'd go through some of the issues with the Rainbow River in terms of the resource value of it. You've heard me talk about this before, and Paul and Bert, we all have. The Rainbow River is a globally significant natural resource. It's one of the best examples of a natural spring left in Florida. Even though it's somewhat degraded, it's still in very good shape. If you jump in the Rainbow River and you snorkel down the river, you will see what a Florida spring is supposed to look like. You will see the fish, you will see the vegetation, and you might see an otter go by, or you might even see an alligator. But most of the other springs of Florida have been so severely degraded, there's no vegetation left. If you go to Wichita, you're not going to see vegetation. So I just thought I'd bring to your attention the amount of effort that's gone into the studies and research on the Rainbow River so that it can be protected for future generations. Here's one, the conservation plan. You've seen me hold these up before. Surface water improvement plan, which is a very thick plan done by SwiftMud. Interesting, they have included recreation in terms of their management goals. So recreation impacts are now being studied and now being paid attention to because they do affect the aquatic community. Here's a plan. This is a restoration plan. And there's piles of these. I have a big pile of the amount of work that's going into protecting the Rainbow River. And it's not only just from our end of it, it's from the entire 5.7 miles of the river. The Rainbow River Aquatic Preserve, some of you know Jeff Sowers, who is our manager, who we have high regard for Jeff. And two of the statements, and we see it occurring again and again. What's in most of these plans is a statement saying to restore the river to its natural condition. This came up when, excuse me, when we were doing the resort discussion. That's part of the Chapter 1820, which is the Florida law that governs aquatic reserves. Same thing in the Swift swim plan. I wanted to read a little language for you. Blame the dentist for this. This is a statement written long ago by the Florida legislature, which still holds true today. This is one of the mission statements out of Chapter 1820, which is the rules and regulations that govern aquatic reserves. To encourage the protection and enhancement or restoration of the biological, aesthetic, or scientific values of the preserves, including but not limited to the modification of existing man-made conditions inward of their natural condition, and discourage activities which would degrade the aesthetic, biological, or scientific values of the quality or utility of the preserve. So again and again and again, what we see is almost every state agency has invested enormous effort into the research to study the impacts on Rainbow River, and recreation is one of them. So we're facing a very important recreation issue here. And I think it's important that we look at this in the context of protecting the river for future generations. And what we know is the experience of visitors is degraded when we have a mass of kayaks and tubes and so on. So we have to look at all these things, user conflicts, the effect on the aquatic community, and also the effect on other visitors. So this is what I wanted to bring your attention as we have a discussion of this issue about how to protect the Rainbow River, I think. Lots of people have been working for a long time. You know, one of the projects, and I'm just about done, one of the projects that I lead and we start again on Friday is Spring Watch, which is a survey of sampling of the water quality conditions. And we do that once a month. And we'll be doing that this Friday. So a lot of people are paying attention to the river. I think the council should keep that in mind as they're making their decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Odom, anyone else? Is there anyone in the audience that did not sign up that would like to speak at this time? Okay, public comments, item number 1 is completed. We go now to item number 2, the Dunnellon Chamber and Business Association report. Julie, welcome back into the building.
Hello. I'm Julie. I am the Julie Mancini. I am the former director of the Dunnellon Chamber and Business Association, and I am here tonight to introduce you to our new director of the Dunnellon Chamber and Business Association and let her give her first report for you. But I want to tell you a little bit about her first, and then also I am here representing Jeff Buchko, who is still working with us at the Chamber as a membership and tourism consultant. So, but before I start, I want to also just tell everyone, you know, this whole COVID thing, I mean, I lost 4 people this week so far, and it's only Wednesday. I know that I was absent, you know, I don't know if you all know, but when I'm absent, I'm actually listening on Zoom. But part of the reason I was absent is because I got COVID, and so did my entire family. And we got light cases, my husband and I, but the rest of everybody got it pretty bad. And it's very serious. And so if you haven't heard from your friends in a couple days, and you usually hear from them, or you're seeing that maybe they're not posting on Facebook, please check with them, because they may be too sick to respond, or, you know, they may need some help. And I just think, you know, small community, we need to help each other. And so with that being said, I want to tell you a little bit about Judy Terwilliger, who is our new executive director. Judy has been a chamber volunteer for several years, and last year, Judy volunteered more hours than any other volunteer in 2020, which ended up being hundreds of hours. She also has a daughter, Erica, who is over here, and both Judy and Erica have volunteered, I think, at every single event that we have had since Judy started volunteering. Judy also was working part-time as a substitute teacher last year, and she finished her business administration degree. So I feel like Judy is very qualified to take over the position of director, and I will be helping her out. She knows she can text me at any time, email me at any time, and I have been in the chamber a little bit, helping to train her so that she can take over the craziness that is the chamber director position. So without further ado, I give you Judy Terwilliger to give you your chamber report.
Good evening.
Welcome, Judy.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, we have a few new members for August. We have Dunnellon Community Service Incorporated and Sabor Colombiano Food Truck. Also, I included July's because it's my understanding that Jeff was not here in July. So for July, we actually had 3 new members. We had Cherokee Winds, we had Great Expectations Realty, and the Lawn Kings. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank 2 of our standing volunteers at the Chamber, Marilyn Welsh and Bonnie Fontaine. Mary Lynn is here, in fact. I don't think I could be doing this without them. They are outstanding. For them. And I appreciate all their help. Also, we have some upcoming events which might be of interest to you. We have on 9/11, which is Saturday, Blue Cove Remembers, and that's going to be at the Holy Faith Church. And then we have the American Legion is also doing a remembrance, and they're also doing a reading of the 13 fallen heroes from Afghanistan on Saturday as well. And they're going to be at noon at the American Legion Hall. We have the duck race on September 25th over at Swampy's from 9 to 11:30. And we have the Two Rivers Music Festival and Food Truck Rally on the 16th of October. And that's going to be over on Pennsylvania and Bostic Street. And so far to date, it's still early yet. We have 5 food trucks, 2 bands, and 5 sponsors so far. Some of the other things we have on is September 14th at 6 o'clock will be our next Chamber Board meeting. And September 28th at 5:30, we'll be hosting our next networking dinner at the train depot. And that concludes my report. Thank you very much.
Any questions for Judy?
Sure.
I think I saw a flyer where you're gonna have a special speaker at Holy Faith in Blue Cove for that event from New York, right?
Yes, I'm not sure of his
On
name,
September
but
11th. I think I
Yes.
saw the flyer.
yep.
Okay. And I have another question.
Sure.
Please spell your last name for me.
Sure, it's a tricky one. T as in Tom, ERWILLIGER.
Thank you.
Awesome.
TERWILLIGER.
Correct.
Okay, give me 2 weeks and I know how to pronounce it.
No problem at all. Thank you very much.
All right.
I'm just gonna call her by her first name.
Okay, one other little plug for the duck race. We've got lots of sponsors for the duck race, but last year we sold out of ducks really fast, like in a week, and we still have plenty of ducks. So if any of you want to buy a duck and see if your duck wins the race, that would be wonderful. And the information is all out on Facebook. If you need me to email, or if you need Judy to email that information, if you're not a Facebook user, please let us know and we'll get it to you. So now I'm here to talk to you a little bit about something that Jeff Uchko, our membership and tourism consultant, has been working on with Jan Cubbage. And basically, we see that there's a need for a website for tourism for Dunnellon. We are thinking that we have people just here crazy on the weekends for most of the summer and some of the rest of the year, but during the week, we could be maybe spreading that out a little bit so that, we don't have all this craziness on the weekends, when the town is pretty empty during the week. And there's other things to do besides the river, which sometimes, people get off the river and then they head home or whatever, and they don't know about all the cute little restaurants we have in town, or they didn't bring their bikes with them, so they don't know that they can take a nice bike ride, and soon it's going to be an even nicer bike ride when that tunnel is all the way complete. So Jeff and Jan had been working, and we were hoping that perhaps you all, when you do your budget negotiations, may be able to help us fund a website for tourism for Dunnellon. And they have so far gotten one proposal from Donald Cowan, who is a website builder. The name of his business is teamnavigator.com, and his estimate would be to build this website to our specifications between $1,500 and $2,000. So we would like to partner with you, the city, to perhaps do a tourism website. It is part of what we are, I know that our bylaws probably need to be updated at the chamber, but part of what the chamber is supposed to do is promote tourism within the city. But we feel like at this point we need a little assistance by maybe having some help with paying for the website.
Julie, what would the monthly fee be for that maintaining?
He doesn't mention a monthly fee. The other thing is, we did some research. I was helping before I left the chamber, and we noticed that most of the surrounding cities, such as Inverness and Crystal River, they do have about 3 paid people on their city staff that are just tourism people. So, you know, we are willing to help, since I know that we have a smaller city staff here. We are willing to help get the website populated with items. We would just like some help financially in the startup costs for the website.
So Julie, you're looking for $2,000.
Yes.
Is the question I would have, whether it be for Jan or Andrew, considering the chamber's the chamber, can the city actually use its tax money for that purpose?
There are a few AG opinions regarding city funds and Chamber of Commerce, and generally it's not permitted. There has to be a paramount public purpose. Accordingly, I could take a look and see if operating a website would fall into the paramount public purpose, seeing that it supports all or the city as a whole. But again, that's really supporting tourists as opposed to everybody that lives in the city. And anybody who would benefit would typically be businesses. And so that could create an issue, and that's generally how the AG opinions run and the line that they conclude. But I can take a look, certainly.
Yeah, could you take a look at that, and possibly at the upcoming council meeting, give us an overview of that?
That's it
Okay, Julie?
for us for today.
If I could make a comment, Bill?
Sure.
Jeff and I did some research after we had talked with David Cowan and had looked into Thomasville, Georgia's website, High Springs, Cedar Key, and the joint website, Brooksville Wekiwachi. They went to outside companies, and the fees that they have been charged have been $8,000 to $15,000 for their websites. And David Cowan, if you take a look at his website, Nature Coast Adventures, he also owns www.lakerusso.com, and he's already worked for parties in Dunnellon, including Rainbow River, Kayak and Canoes, and several others. But check out, he does dynamite work. I think he's almost joining up with us because he already does business with businesses here in town, and he's given us one good deal.
All right, Julie. Just speaking on my behalf, I am the liaison with the Marion County Tourist. And I have learned very quickly how important these things are. And I'm sure if there's a way, council would like to look into this. Okay, are we done with number 2, board chamber? Now we go to number 3, board reports. Do we have any board reports? Ms. Arville, do you have anything to report to us from the Planning Commission? I had to twist your arm, huh?
Brenda D'Arville, 11661 Camp Drive. Really not anything of substance. As you know, we are still waiting for our community development director, where we can get a little more action going on with our board. Right now, what we've been doing is our comprehensive plan is very dry to read. And so we've been looking at other cities, small cities comparable to Dunnellon, and seeing some exciting comprehensive plans, if you can describe it as that, the nice pictures and so forth. But particularly what we want to focus on is the mission statement. And our legal counsel has indicated how important it is to have a mission statement for a city. There's actually been cases that have been settled because there was a mission statement. So because Dunnellon doesn't have one, we'll be looking forward to working on that. And we are also told by legal counsel that that will require a community workshop or public meeting so that the public has input in helping to formulate that. And so that's what we're focusing on until we get other business before our board. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other board reports? Okay, now we go to item number 4, the introduction of a candidate for our community development manager. Mandy, you want to lead us in on this?
Yes, sir. At our previous meeting, you met one of the candidates, Matt Lindler. And at that time, we had a second candidate that was unable to attend that meeting and unfortunately could not be here tonight, but she is attending by Zoom. Her name is Georgina Sid. Just a little bit about her. She will introduce herself, but she does have a master's degree in public administration and has about 8 years of public service working with other municipalities. So I will bring her over on Zoom, and I also put a letter that she submitted to you up at your spots there. Let's see if we can get her over here. Okay, Georgina, can you hear me?
I can. Good evening. How are you guys?
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Awesome. Well, good evening, everybody. Mr. Mayor, members of the commission. I really appreciate you bringing me in via Zoom. Unfortunately, I can't be there in person because I was diagnosed with COVID the day before the initial workshop. And so I've been battling COVID for a week now. Thank God I'm doing a lot better now, and I'm able to get on via Zoom and introduce myself to you all. But I thank you for making this happen. I am very interested in the position of community development manager. I feel I have the qualifications that you have asked for this position. I have, like Mandy mentioned, I have 8 years in working with municipalities. I come from South Florida. I worked at the city of Weston, the city of Lake Worth, the city of Miramar, and in all, it's been a wonderful experience for me. I was able to find my true calling working in municipalities. I was able to learn about the different structures in government and how that all ties down to making a city great. And so I want to put my experience at your disposal and be able to show you what I can do for the city. I started my career in banking, so I have some banking, financial management, managerial, and accounting experience to back my expertise. I have a bachelor's in business. I had my own business at one point. I did trucking for a while, and as you all know, it's a different creature. But that gave me a lot of experience in managing a specific crowd and in making sure that the services are rendered in the absolute way. and that we followed regulations and all that. My biggest asset is customer service. I'm a natural born public servant. I love to help people. I love to be able to provide services, listen to what people need, and try to bring that in my everyday operations and help them. I feel that in this role as the community development manager, I would be able to help with specifically with the springs, with the river issues that you encounter on a daily basis, with tourists coming in. I feel that I have that I can make big plans to work it in the daily operations of the city to make all this flow in a better way, so that the city of Dunnellon can have the best quality of life possible. I also have knowledge of grant writing. I am a notary myself, and I am very motivated in keeping my education going. The possibility of going to school again to get a master's degree in urban planning has been very thrilling for me. I'm super excited about that. I know that that is one of the specifications of this role, and I am extremely excited about going back to school to getting this this master's degree. I already contacted University of Florida to get information on that, and based on my education, my background, my experience so far in government, I feel that I have all that it's required for this position, and I feel that I would make a great candidate for you all. And I ask humbly to get the opportunity to show you what I can do for the city.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That was a wonderful presentation. I had the opportunity to meet with Georgiana okay, about a week ago or a little bit before that. And Mandy and I spoke with her, and I had an opportunity just to talk with her. An incredibly sharp person, as you can see. She has her master's in business administration. She's worked in 3 different municipalities in various positions of management. What impressed me as much as anything was her recommendations from her superiors that she had worked for in other municipalities. Not only were the recommendations strong and positive, they were glowing. They were absolutely glowing. I made a little joke that when I ask for a reference, I'm lucky if they say, yeah, he's good in a pinch, you know. Her recommendations were, they went something like this: team player, always willing to help, willing to put in extra time, willing to learn and multitask. It just sounded like an individual that had the attributes of everything we're looking for. And the one thing I'd like to say is, even though she doesn't have a degree in public planning, we have exhausted our ability to try to find someone who would fit into this role at the salary that the city can pay. And I don't even think the salary's the issue. I think just finding someone. I know the city and the county, I've heard that from time to time, when they have openings in these fields, it's difficult for them to find people. There's just simply a shortage of people with degrees in urban planning. Florida's exploding in population growth. Every urban area needs somebody who has experience or a degree in this. There's a great demand for this. So knowing that we have flipped every rock and we have advertised, I don't know how much money we have spent at this point, but I know it's several $1,000s. And her interview with me was extremely positive. I think giving her an opportunity to show us what she's all about, I'm all in.
And yes.
Yep.
And Mandy, when would she be able to start work if we decide to vote in favor of her?
She's available to start immediately.
And with our Teresa about to leave, I would think putting her in as soon as she's feeling better, of course, would be a great asset so that she could learn some of the things that the department, that are already on our plate. And then, of course, the Planning Commission, I'm sure would love to have somebody to start working with them. As we said, we need a mission statement. So it seems like this would be a good fit if she could, once she's feeling better, of course.
Ms. Coverage?
How could we expedite this?
Put it on the agenda
Monday.
for Monday.
Yes, we will.
Any other comments?
I would just like to say that I reviewed her resume on LinkedIn, and I think it was very impressive. And she has endorsements in management and leadership. And if I'm counting correctly, I think she has like 9 years in municipality experience. So I think her background is impressive. And like you say, we have exhausted all of our efforts. And she's bilingual from where I saw. So that's a plus.
She's actually a certified translator as well.
Really?
Wow.
Okay, great. So that's a plus for me.
Big plus.
Ms. Kenny?
When we hire a new department head, is there a general procedure where they are on a probation for 90 days to see if they fit into the community and to the department and they're happy?
Yes, there's actually, for all staff positions, there's a 6-month probation period.
I think it would be great.
And I think Vice Mayor made a real good point. I don't know if everyone in the audience knows that Teresa is just about a month from retiring.
October 30th.
So we have that about ready to happen too. So without filling this position or getting someone in the position with Teresa's retirement, we basically have no one manning that part of the city business. So I think, okay, it's, yes.
Oh, one more thing I forgot to mention.
Sure,
I love
please.
the fact that one of the persons on LinkedIn said she's a genuine expert.
Aw.
I like that.
So Mandy, our job on this is you have made the recommendation, and it's council's job at this point to approve or not approve a recommendation. I think by the discussion, I think you have a consensus. Yeah, you have a consensus. So I would put this on the agenda for Monday and on the consent agenda.
If council all agrees it should go on consent, I can do that.
All right.
Yes.
Can I ask Attorney Hand, can we instruct Mandy to offer Ms. Georgina the position before Monday? I mean, for that
we know that she's okay with what the position will be paid and such and so forth as a consensus?
Ultimately, per your new rules, council has ultimate authority, so it would need to be on the agenda.
Right. But I mean, can we go ahead tonight and at least as a consensus, tell her to move forward and to thank the other gentleman, but to go ahead and move forward as a consensus?
Well, you don't have an established set of procedures yet, so that I would say is at the council's discretion. So in that case, if that's the way council wishes to proceed and then have some ultimate authority to essentially ratify a decision after providing a consensus, I think that would be okay.
Is that okay with everybody?
What exactly are you suggesting?
I'm just suggesting that we give Mandy a consensus.
I think if
To move
I may,
forward.
I think what you're trying to say is there are certain things that have to happen before I can officially bring somebody on board, which involves a background check, a pre-employment physical, a drug screen, that sort of thing.
Right.
So if you want to authorize me to move forward with those
Yes.
necessary steps in order to bring her on board, following your official vote on Monday, I can do that.
Yes.
Okay.
Tell her to start packing her bags.
Okay.
I like this. Okay.
Yeah, feel better.
Thank you.
Oh, that's a pretty smile.
There we go.
Okay, Georgina, we'll let you go. Thank you so much for coming on Zoom and introducing yourself tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. You have a wonderful evening.
You as well, Georgina. Feel well.
Thanks.
All right. Congrats.
Congrats.
It's my understanding, and item number 5 has been going to be delayed to some other time. Ms. Odom, correct?
Yes, sir. She emailed me, Mrs. DeMaster, and asked that this be deferred to your October 6th workshop.
Okay, please do. All right, we go to number 6, a presentation and from Mr. John P. Patrick from Vanguard Modular. Mr. Patrick, are you here? No, not here. Okay. Ms. Odom, were you aware he wasn't here?
No, sir.
Okay. All right, then we go to number 7, a presentation by Kurt Russell from Vesta Modular. And sir, like I said, you told me that you would only need 5 minutes, but I've actually said you have up to 10. But if you try to go past 10.
That's right.
Name and address again, sir.
My name is Chris Russell. I live at 816 Berry Hill Circle in the beautiful town of Fruitland Park. Wanted to come before you tonight, council and mayor and people of Dunnellon, and just clarify something that was mentioned to me that I thought I needed to come out and clarify from my original presentation. And it really states it right there. Modular buildings are sustainable. They are as effective and durable as anything that you can build stick-built. The main difference is the fact that you're building these buildings in a factory, in a controlled environment where the materials are not subject to the weather. There's a common misconception about this process. And anytime you have something that's unfamiliar, and I understand in the state of Florida, the problems that have arisen from mobile homes, and a lot of people associate modular buildings with mobile homes, and they're not the same. It's not the same animal. There were a lot of, let's say, questionable mobile homes that were built and put in the state of Florida. Completely understand. And that's why we have the standards that to meet like we do in my commercial industry. We have to have our plans stamped and approved by the state of Florida. Before that, they go through a third-party review to make sure that everything that's in the design and all of the specs meet the qualifications and the specifications for the state of Florida. So for example, if we spec out a building and we use I'll throw a name out that's probably familiar with all of you, Pell-Up windows, and it's not on the state of Florida list of approved building components, then I have to go through and do the due diligence of sending the state of Florida or the third-party reviewer the spec sheets, the cut sheets, and the specifications for those color windows, so I can get it on an approved material list for the state of Florida. Okay? Modular building is eco-friendly, very eco-friendly, and I was listening to the gentleman that was talking about the Rainbow River and how important that the Rainbow River and the Coochie River are to this community. And if you're not cognizant of the environment that you're going into for your client, then you're really doing your client a disservice. So modular buildings are very eco-friendly. Go to the next slide, if you would. And as I mentioned, anything that's new or that's unfamiliar, we all have a tendency, I do, to be a little bit skeptical and not fully understand what's going on. And I hope the first presentation that I did with the council was a bit enlightening. I'm just trying to clarify some of the things that were mentioned that I thought needed to be more clarification. Of course, in any process, there's going to be the possibility for human error. None of us can deny that. But what's one of the advantages of commercial modular building construction is the fact that you don't have as many subs on a construction site, therefore you don't have as much interaction with people, and some people get along with other people, some people don't, you know. So you're doing this in a controlled environment, you're limiting the number of subs that you have, which also limits your liability and that type of thing. And all of our factories, the environment is very controlled. These buildings roll in, and if you decide to go this route, one of the things that I always offer my clients is the opportunity to come see your building being built. One of the factories that I would like to use, and there's a number of factors as to which factory I use, is right down here in Leesburg. And I'm right in Fruitland Park, so maybe that's a good thing, maybe that's a bad thing. I don't know, but certainly I have a stake in the game because I am so close. And the last thing I want to do is have my reputation be damaged because I am this close and you guys do not get the kind of satisfaction you want out of your building. Next slide.
This is number 4.
Okay, that is number 4. Okay. And again, going back to the green, we reduce the amount of waste because we are building these buildings in the factory. So you don't have the weather element, you don't have the possibility of materials walking off the job site and that type of thing, which all costs time and money. Next slide, if you have it. The process is, I think we explained a little bit about the process in the last meeting. That's what makes modular ahead of the stick-built process, is the fact that we can be doing site work, we can be doing some of these things while your building is being built. We don't have to wait for the site to be done before we start construction. And again, going back to the durability, we can set this building, as you see this building, this is a 4-story building. It's all done with modulars. The thing with a modular, like that you guys are talking about, we can put this on a permanent knee wall foundation and actually weld the frame, the steel frame of the building to plates that are set in the concrete foundation, the knee wall foundation, which if you're familiar with construction, standard frame type of construction, wood frame construction, you're basically bolting your your silk plate to the concrete itself. So as opposed to a bolt, you've got an actual steel weld to the foundation. Next slide. These are just some people that have worked with us, and so I'm sure you recognize all his names. I'm not going any further. And these are the various industries that we've worked with. I think we went over that the last time I was here. So I won't go any further as far as that goes. And then I believe the rest of the slides, which I can make available to any of the council people or anybody that wants to see them, the rest of the slides, I believe, are just basically case studies of permanent modular construction that have been done throughout the country. Bigness, that was actually a homeless shelter over in California. Ann Arbor Public Schools, that was up in Michigan, of course. And Ocean Cave, this is the one I really wanted to get to because you talk about durability. This is in the Bahamas, where we had to go and base this project on the type of hurricane conditions that you have, because we're all familiar with the state of Florida. We do have those occasional hurricanes. And this had to be built to those standards. So it's going to be a durable building. Next slide is another type of project that we did. I believe that was also done out in California. And basically, that's pretty much it. Like I said, I wanted to come tonight and clarify the fact that modular buildings are a sustainable product. And I used the period of time, I think last time, 20 to 30 years. That was pretty much because that's how long I've been in the business. And I'm very passionate about what I do. I love the modular building concept, and I wasn't quite talented enough to be an architect or an engineer, so I got into this end of the process. But I assure you that I've been in the business 20 to 30 years, 25 years or so, and I do not know of any of the buildings that I personally worked on that had an issue with durability. Again, it's just like your home. If you go along, eventually you do need to paint the exterior or change a filter in an AC unit. That doesn't change with modular. That's the way it is with any type of building. Or for a car, for example. Car, you gotta change your oil. So it's the same type of thing with the modular product. The building is using the same materials as you would if you were gonna do a stick. So, if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you may have, and I hope I kept it under 10 minutes.
I haven't heard the gong go off yet.
You don't hear the gong go.
7, 6, 5.
Okay, I just have one question. It's a question that you've answered, but I'd like it repeated. If the city decided to go this way, and we had our ducks in a row, and we signed a contract and handed the contract to you, from that point, how long would it take from that point to we would have a finished building on a lot of our choosing?
On site, I will quote you a standard, typical situation, 6 to 8 weeks. Okay? Now, I'll
6 to 8 weeks before you begin.
No, 6 to 8 weeks from the time that you sign off on the prints, as this is the final product, to final installation. Now, a couple of caveats there. Number one, some things I can't control, and that would be inspections, building inspections, etc. Number two, we just had, for example, for the hurricane that went up through Louisiana, was it Ida? That affects our inventory immensely. Anytime we have a hurricane go through, for example, when Katrina went through, I was working in the industry up in Chicago. We were moving buildings from Chicago down to New Orleans. So that may affect production time. But as a general rule, from sign off to the time that I drop a building on your site, depending upon weather and the permits, about 6 to 8 weeks.
Because I recall, I mean, that time frame is mind-blowing. When I recall you saying before, which I thought was a great number, you said it would be 6 to 8 months you'd have a finished building.
No.
6 to 8 weeks?
6 to 8 weeks from time of final sign-off to the time that we get the building on site.
So final sign-off means what?
On the blueprints, you sign off on the specs, you sign off on everything that's there, as far as what's going into your building, going into your product.
It's almost too much to believe.
Well, like I said, again, caveats are some of the things that I mentioned, weather, hurricane, that type of thing. So.
Okay.
Just.
Okay, yes, please.
Just, I know you said 6 to 8 weeks, but 6 to 8 weeks puts it on the property, and then we have to go in and do the electrical and those types of things, correct?
That's
So
correct.
it's not turn the key and walk in the
No,
door.
it's not turn the key at that
8 weeks.
point in time. It's, the building is there, it's set, and of course, this all depends upon the size. If it's a, some of the complexes that we were looking at.
Yeah.
That's a whole different ballgame. But yeah, that's 6 to 8 weeks. I feel very comfortable getting the building on site, getting it set, and then we get in with the electrical connections, we get those types of things.
So I didn't ask my question properly.
Okay.
When would it be turnkey?
Turnkey, again, depending upon any outside subs, what their schedules would be like, you're probably looking at adding another, let's say, a couple of months to that 6 to 8 weeks.
Okay.
So I feel very comfortable about getting you a building in 6 months, without a doubt.
Okay. And that was my recollection.
And just one more, and then I promise you I'll let you do it. Did you say it was a stick, that it was frame? Is that what I heard?
We can do it wood frame, we do metal stud. Either way, whatever my client is requesting, I can do it. I can't say probably, I can do it. I've done 2 stories, I've done, all different types. The main thing is, what I think really doesn't matter, it's what's going to be effective for the city to know. That's what really counts, period.
Frame, I would not be a fan of.
What's that?
I would not be a fan of frame, wood frame.
Mm-hmm. We can do metal stud. I've done several metal stud buildings.
Thank you.
Ms. Williams?
Sure.
Are those buildings well insulated?
Yes, the building, first of all, I'll answer that question in a couple of different ways. We have insulation standards that we have to meet by the state of Florida and by the engineers. Secondly, if, for example, you wanted certain offices soundproof, and in a police station, I can imagine that's probably going to be very much a concern. We can do that. And there are some other things that I can show you through my experience that when we get time to check this building out, I can make recommendations for energy efficiency. The roof, for example, instead of going with a black roof, which absorbs heat in the state of Florida, that's the last thing you want to do in the summertime. You go with a white roof, and you go with a little bit thicker roof. That way you're not losing any, and you're not having any of the sun beating down on the building, white versus black. Moisture protection. There's, we can put a dehumidification unit on each of the air conditioning units to reduce the humidity inside a building, which will help save finishes, floors, etc. I would recommend that to all my clients, especially in the state of Florida. We had this little thing called humidity in the state of Florida.
Thank you.
Mr. Russell, you said last time at your work, at your presentation, that you would do the plans based on what we said and give us an estimate without any charge.
Absolutely.
Correct. So what you would really need at this point, if we're interested, and certainly we're interested, is to get direction from, council needs to give direction how we can at least start the process. There's no downside to getting an idea what it would cost per square foot. And just get an idea.
Well, I mean, I agree with that concept. However, that's jumping so many hoops before we have anything. We have no land. We have no location. I mean, there's been no public hearings about this. I appreciate you coming and answering our questions and giving us a thought, but there is nowhere for us to put this, nowhere for us to go. We own a building at the moment. So I really think that concept of, and so what I'm saying is 6 months from now, we might be available to start thinking about a concept of a building, because we don't know which way it would need to face. I mean, that's just not a good idea.
Well,
Respectfully, sir.
If my suggestion was, as you're describing, I would agree it would be a bad idea, but that's not what I suggested. What I suggested was for council to give him a notice that based on the size of our building, which I think the chief has talked with you a little bit about that, and he's given you an idea what he's looking at. So what would be nice, based on what you know and what the chief's needs are, to do nothing more than give us an idea what the costs would be associated with that.
Based on current conditions, exactly, that's absolutely.
And I think he needs to speak with our Public Works Director, who's in charge of all of our buildings, to make sure that everything that a city building needs. Again, I just think it's premature to ask somebody to do a lot of work when we might not be using you. And that's just the plain fact.
And I appreciate your concern. However, that is my job. I mean, I really do. I work with a number of clients, both private and in the public sector. And we go through and they say, look, I have not got my site yet. That is something that's pending. And depending on how we've qualified and gone back and forth, I may say, that's not a problem. Let me start getting you some budgetary numbers so you've got something to grab onto, as opposed to a lot of kind of conjecture.
Well, and that's what I'm.
Part of my job, and that's what I have to do, and I have no problem doing that.
Yeah, because we might not be able to afford a piece of property.
That's completely understood, believe me.
And that's the risk he has assumed, that if he does this work and he gives us that information, if we cannot go forward for whatever reason, he just did a lot of work for nothing.
That's part of the cost of doing business. You have to do what's in your client's best interest, period.
So Manny, I request you put that on the agenda for discussion for the meeting, that we start the process of trying to figure out what the costs would be to do a building the size that we're talking about. I see no downside to at least know what the numbers are that we're needing to deal with. So please put it on the agenda.
Discussion?
You
just want it on as discussion?
I want it on the agenda for discussion, yes. And from that, since it's a council meeting, we can possibly take a vote and give direction on asking you to proceed with getting us some numbers.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And that's all it is. It's just getting some numbers.
That's the intention. I completely understand that.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Russell.
Thank you guys very much for allowing me to come back and make some of these clarifications. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Safe travels home.
Okay, we go to presentation number 8. We have Mr. Robert Bassel, who is the attorney for Rainbow River Kayak Adventures.
No, we,
I already did.
Welcome, Mr. Bassel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I assure you, Ms. Bryant and her colleagues may have an issue if I was their attorney. I am not. I don't want to pretend I am. I am here tonight representing Chris Anderson, Rainbow River Kayak Adventures. Again, my name is Rob Bassel, 1531 Southeast 36th Avenue, Ocala. Thank you very much for having me back and allowing me to take a few minutes of your time on this agenda. I do appreciate it. At your station, I've placed a draft agreement that I'm going to reference in a minute, but before we get there, I don't want to repeat what I've said in prior workshops and waste your time in that respect, but I'm here again because I hope that my optimism is reasonable, but I'm reasonably optimistic that I can convince you that we understand what we perceive to be the issue and that we're much better off together in this effort than on our own. And I think that and we'll get into the management plan in a moment, but as you look at some of these governing documents, one thing that is very apparent is that from the outset, and as it remains today, this is a partnership. It must be a partnership. The secret's out. The Rainbow River is beautiful. It's a wonderful resource, and we all enjoy it. And while some, and on a nice day when I'm floating the river, I wish I was the only one out there too. But the reality is we are going to need to manage this together. That includes not only the city and the county and the state through several different agencies and local players like the RRC, but it's going to include local people like Mr. Anderson and his business who can help make this process safer, a higher quality experience for those who come to enjoy it, better for the city, better for our waterfront property owners, better for all concerned. And I promise you, I'm not going to stand up here and read a contract. Let me tell you, I know that that's not high on the list of the most engaging things to come up here and do. But I do want to point to a couple little references. And again, I'm not going to read a whole lot, but from the management plan, just to reiterate, the city's words and the party's words at the inception of this whole thing mean a whole lot more than whatever I come up here and tell you. And so one excerpt is, Dunnellon will work to strengthen partnerships and seek additional partners to provide the most efficient and effective management possible. And again, we're talking about a management plan here. One of the objectives, and I'm going to read an entire little paragraph here, but a goal is to provide safe access and egress from the Rainbow River. Currently, a portion of the site is under a lease agreement by the Marion County Parks and Recreation Department as a tubers exit for people who launch tubes, canoes, and kayaks from the county-operated facility, KP Hole, approximately 3.3 miles upriver. The proposed improvements for river access and egress will help mitigate erosion issues along the riverbank and provide a safer transfer point for the river users, while also providing parking and an area for shuttle services loading. Of the management objectives, of which there are 6, a couple of them are to improve access to recreation opportunities for all Dunnellon and Marion County citizens and visitors to the area, to plan, develop, and provide new recreational opportunities to better serve community needs, and importantly, to assist in the development of partnership programs with other local, state, and federal agencies and private organizations and businesses. The preservation of this site as an alternative to development provides recreation access to the Rainbow River and will continue its historic use as a recreational tuber takeout point. In fact, part of the management plan references verbatim your comprehensive plan, the city's comprehensive plan, which includes a statement that the Blue Run Park is, quote, the only public site for the drop-off and pickup of tubers on the Rainbow River, and thus the need for grant money so that the property can be acquired and managed with partners that I've referenced above and that you've referenced in your management plan. There are more references. This is a bit repetitive, but the existing water access point, which allows the exit of tubers and access to kayakers to and from the river, will be improved. These are snippets, but they're goals of the management plan. I'm going to quit reading portions, but I just want to hammer home the fact that this is going to be a consolidated effort of several, but at all times, this management plan, which I didn't get to it, but I should mention, does state that commercial use should only occur through an agreement, and so does your ordinance. And I congratulate you and support your effort to draft an ordinance and adopt an ordinance that is consistent with the management plan and codifies it. And so I'm standing up here hopeful that that portion of the management plan and the ordinance that provides for an agreement with third-party partners such as Rainbow River Kayak Adventures is something we're all willing to talk about, discuss, and kind of dive into. And so with that, I'm going to jump into to the draft agreement. Again, not going to read it to you. I hope you will. And let me jump to the end here, and then I'll come back. What I hope comes out of this is some good discussion and ultimately some direction for you all and Mr. Hand and myself and my client to come up with an agreement that makes sense. And that's also going to involve, of course, FCT, who I've spoken with. They are going to need to be a part of this. And to some extent, I really believe the county needs to be a part of this as well. As you know, the interlocal between the city and the county basically provides or vests the county with operational oversight of the park. And so they are obviously extremely important. And we have a standing relationship. Rainbow River Kayak Adventures is the delivery service for the county at KP Hole. They must pick up those who they drop in the river. That would be another problem. And so we need to figure this out. So as it relates to the agreement, I have a lot of fluffy whereas language that just illustrates the need for us all to work together, much along the same lines as what I've done. I suspect we'll also need to incorporate references to some of the management plan, the covenants and restriction, FCT's role, the county's role, and that is for a later day. But the agreement is pretty straightforward. And what it is an attempt to do is do one little simple thing for my client, which is just provide a grant of access for egress of tubers exiting the river and kayakers exiting the river in an efficient way. And then a whole lot of it, the rest of it is essentially a whole lot of restrictions on what he can do and things that he must do to benefit the community and the city's effort to manage the park. So, and I'm just going to run through the granted location is just describes the fact that we're limited to Blue Run Park as it relates to this agreement. We've provided for a term of 10 years with a few renewals, but again, we can discuss that. We provided for a franchise fee of $5,000 per year payable to the city, which will then be reinvested into the park. That is, in the management plan, it provides that any funds received in connection with the park must be reinvested in the park, so we've incorporated that into this agreement. I need to break it out in a separate paragraph, but we've also done a number of things through the agreement to make sure that anyone observing someone on the river knows which company or who is responsible for putting them on the river. And so one way to do that is through color-coded wristbands to ensure, and we'll get to that. There are some other things baked into this as well that try to address that need. Importantly, we put in some pretty healthy insurance requirements, $1 million in TGL, $1 million in workers' comp, $300,000 in commercial auto liability policies for the shuttles to make sure, and also all of those policies, maybe perhaps the workers' comp because there's no need, but would include the city as an additional insured. So no concern about liability associated with this. And there's also an indemnification clause in the back in favor of the city. I know I'm getting a little bit lawyery talking about stuff like that, but you know, it mitigates the risk if you're concerned about risk on that front. Paragraph 8 is a good one to look at, and we don't need to solve it tonight, but it's a whole lot of stuff that we're promising to do that we think is helpful. One is that we are, of course, and we hope that anyone who stands up here and asks to do this will be a local business tax receipt holder. My client owns real property where he conducts his business and has a business tax receipt, and we hope that level of investment is there with anyone who you consider. In 8.2, we're taking responsibility for supervision of anybody launching a paddlecraft, and that's a catch-all for any kind of a kayaker, tuber, paddleboarder, et cetera. And we'll not hold ourselves out as employees. So we will supervise, but make sure that we are not holding ourselves out as employees. In fact, later in the agreement, it provides that we'll make sure that we're wearing clearly marked uniforms and the vehicles are marked so that everybody knows who we are when we're on site. We will make sure that we get back to that risk issue, a waiver and release of liability in favor of the city from every patron who uses the service. Shuttles are willing to only park in the area designated by you've said the city manager or his or her designee. I can change that to city clerk and or city council. What we're trying to convey here is we will make sure that we follow whatever traffic pattern you think is most appropriate. And the next one is an overflow from the same thing. We'll make sure we don't disrupt vehicle flow through the lot and understand that during busy times, staging may be necessary at the city's direction. Let's see here. We will make sure that paddlecrafts and patrons exiting the river only do so within the designated defined ramp or launch site. Am I already at 10 minutes? I'm sorry. I'll wrap it up here. Importantly, provide training to all patrons who we put out on the water, whether it's related to safety, care of the river, care of those who live and own property adjacent to the river, illegality of certain behavior like drinking on the river. We will never ever leave or store equipment in the park. We will make sure that our patrons have adequate safety equipment that complies with all U.S. Coast Guard requirements. And we'll make sure that we don't let people out in inclement weather. Finally, we've put a couple other belts and suspenders on this. This does not have to be the last time we talk about this, and I won't. After paragraph 10, most of what we're talking about is you'll want to delegate to Andrew because it's just stuff that I think he'd want to see in it. But at the end of the day, I'm here because I want to demonstrate to you that we're willing to, give a chunk of flesh and make sure that you understand that we're trying to be a good partner here. And I tell clients all the time that even if it's the nicest person in the world across the table from you, you need a good contract because you have to assume that everything's not going to go so well, right? And so what we want to do through this agreement is demonstrate to you that we're willing to do what it takes to earn your trust as a partner. And so if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Any questions or comments?
I have comments. First of all, a reminder to everyone here that the Rainbow River is a nationally recognized and protected aquatic preserve. The degradation that is already ongoing is well recognized by the state of Florida, not just by Rainbow River Conservation. Okay, we also must be aware that this river is also a concern of Southwest Florida Water Management District, that the U.S. Geological Service studies constantly monitor the river. I've been out there on the river and talked to those people, and they see and record continuing degradation. I myself have been out on that river as recently as last week and have seen clumps of watergrass with the mud still attached flowing down the river on a Monday morning. That's the result of the weekend activity. So we already have partners using that river for public enjoyment. A reminder that those three partners are the Head Springs, the State Park tubing business, and also KP Hole. And there were limitations, thanks to our police chief, who brought up the fact that the amount of people being put on the river, especially on these 3-day weekends, is a mismanagement of the river and of that park. And it's a danger to people. Why kids haven't been killed and run over there yet, we don't know. But it's about the amount of people already accessing that park. I do not understand why there would be even any consideration for commercial partnerships when there's already ordinance in place that bars this. And I'm going to go in of research an example is what has happened to the Weeki Wachee River. The degradation of that river happened very quickly. And one of the reasons why is the fact is more people are getting on rivers in kayaks and tubes. It is the thing to do. It is the place to go. And the numbers keep increasing. And what happened to the Weeki Wachee was increased devastation in about a 5-year period, to the point where Southwest Florida Water Management District stepped in and said, stop, we need to do a study. And they did. Their study ran from July of 2019 to June of 2020. It cost the state of Florida taxpayers over $200,000. It was co-financed by Florida DEP. And what they found was this. You cannot control the behavior of the people once they are on the river. Regardless of how they are instructed, they constantly saw actions that cause the degradation of the banks, the grass bottoms. People cannot stay in a tube or a kayak if they have to go to the bathroom. They get out and play. And regardless of instruction that's given, they found out it wasn't the numbers that were put on the river, but also the behaviors of those people you cannot control. And that is serious degradation that results from people's actions. It's no different than the people who get in on the tuber park, come out, and as they leave and drive down our local roads, they throw soda cans and their McDonald's bags out the window of their cars as they're leaving our area. Cannot control the behaviors of people who come as outsiders and don't love that river like we do and want to keep it. Somehow, in a state where the degradation of the river will not continue. Okay, and there is much more I can say, but I do not see any reason why we need to have a commercial partner. We do not need the money. Okay, there's also another river to put people out on the Withlacoochee. That's what we should be investing. And again, we do not need another commercial partner, put more people on the river. There's more than enough people on that river as already being put through the concessions at our state park and our county park. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Covage. Anyone else that would like to make a comment?
I do.
Yes, Ms. Tenney.
I have been involved with the Blue Run Park since 2008. I have seen the amount of effort that has gone through the city in conjunction with the county in order to provide for the people locally a place where they could have a passive park. A passive park from the very inception with working with the FCT. Part of our commitment was that it would be a non-governmental commercial use in the park. And the only exception, the sole approved exception to governmental commercial use was the KP Hole shuttle operation by Marion County. What I have heard from your presentation is a business plan that no doubt is something that an individual is advocating. But you open that door to a business plan for one person, and you have opened the door for many, many other people who have the same right as to present a business plan. And yet, every time we have a meeting, and this mayor is particularly good at it, he has allowed for the public to express their concerns. And usually when there's a grievance, it has to do with over-congestion on the river. It has too many, the concern for the environment of the river. I think the whole thing is very, very inappropriate and very unwise, and it is something that I would never vote for.
Okay, any other comments? You don't have to comment unless you wish to. Okay, thank you very much.
All right, may I respond to address some of those?
Or can I comment?
Oh, of course, I thought.
No, you just skipped over me. That's
Okay, go ahead, please.
And just to let you know, I kind of look at this franchise agreement as not just coming from your client, but I look at it as as an agreement that would be something for us to look at as a whole for anyone who would come to the city and I'll agree with you and y'all, that I don't want multiple businesses coming in. It would have to be almost on a, I don't want to use the word lottery, but more like how you had to bid for the position for the county. That would be my take on it if we can go this route. I mean, just glancing over, I understand I think your liabilities, of course, I kind of look at the liability aspects of it just because of being in real estate and such. And I will take issue, yes, ma'am, we do need money. And that's something that we've always tried finding. So, I mean, $5,000 a year would not be something that we would want to sneeze at. However, I would always want to make sure that whatever we do with this city and with the Rainbow River and with the Fuji River, that we are always putting its environment and its well-being front and forward. I know I've had a lot of emails saying that you shouldn't even be speaking, and to that, that's not right, because you have a right to come and speak, as does everyone. So, there's nothing wrong with y'all coming, talking to us about this. Again, I think you put a lot of good effort into this. If anything, I think we would have to do a public forum inviting everybody to here and the players and our partners to discuss it as not just for your client, but as a whole. So that's how I've been looking at it, not just for Mr. Anderson, but just as a whole, for the whole city, to see what we would need to do, because you're not the only person that's ever going to ask us to do this. And I think if we just try and not get ourselves in front of these kind of situations, then we're working blindly as a city and not looking to the future and making sure that we don't get forced into a subject that we don't want to. So thank y'all.
In fairness, if you speak a second time, that means everybody else can speak a second.
But I will say.
In fairness, 3 minutes for your response.
Yeah, oh, sure. Yeah.
3 minutes, Mandy.
And I'm just going to address some of the concerns I've heard. So, Ms. Covage, what I heard from you is we have a people problem and a behavior problem. I do not believe the city is equipped to change human behavior or stop the public from visiting a sovereign submerged land that is owned by the state that they have a right to visit. And in fact, that this grant was awarded to increase their ability to access the river. I understand your position completely. I just think it would be naive of us to assume that people are just going to quit coming if you shut down one local business owner. So what I'm suggesting is an alternative route where we work on this together. And I know that you're viewing us as this commercial enterprise, but I know that we have a role to share. And that agreement came in part from another place where I worked, where I was on the government side of this, and we came up with a solution that allowed vendors to continue to do what they do, but in a more responsible manner and address the actual problems. And they were a very helpful partner in that effort. As far as an ordinance that currently bars this, we're currently still operating under a resolution that allows this. And so I would just want to clarify that. And then as far as Ms. Kinney, I appreciate your concern about this. It is sort of a plan. I wouldn't call it a business plan. But again, when it relates to the concerns about congestion and environmental responsibility, we cannot turn off the flow of visitors who want to enjoy this beautiful asset. All we can do is manage it. And again, we are better together, and we're open to opening up that agreement and putting whatever else you all think is appropriate in order to better manage this asset. But this degradation that we're concerned about, we are just as concerned as you are. But if these people, I've been 18, and if they don't have Rainbow River Kayak Adventures to go to, they bring a buddy, they drop a car in the park that only has 35 places, they drive up to KP Hole, they put in, and then they drive each other back, and now we got 2 vehicles instead of 1. And the one would be parked at my client's business off-site instead of clogging our parks. That is reality. These people are not going to just not come. And in the process, it's worth mentioning, well, first of all, Ms. Hancher, I didn't address one of your concerns, but there is a non-exclusivity clause in the agreement that says we're not the only ones who get this. I did draft it with the intent of us coming up with some framework that would work for other vendors as well. We are not here to say we're the only one who can do it or who can help. But at the end of this, what I ought to mention, and yes, ma'am, I have 26 more seconds, is that what you are talking about here is taking an individual who's here and paying me to be here to engage in this conversation and trying to convince you all that he's a good steward, was born here, raised here, has a brick and mortar business here, and you are talking about flippantly putting him out of business just because, and the result of which is that the only operators we have operating on this river are government entities.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is there?
No, I
further
end
comment?
discussion.
You end
Discussion is
okay.
ended on this.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
It's too bad.
All right.
No rebuttal to his comments?
Unless council wants to overrule, I've ended discussion on this.
Can we vote to overrule? Because he did make a comment that I'd like to address.
All right. Ms. Kenny, do you want to end discussion?
Well, I do think that this is critical and it needs to be continued, but I don't know at what time. And I am anxious to hear from public comment, actually.
Okay, so
So I'm good to stay.
no.
Correct.
Ms. Williams, you want to continue discussing this or you want to move on? You want to move on? I want to move on, so we move on. All right. We go to number 9, which has already been taken care of. So, right? So we're going to put that on the consent agenda. Correct. Right now we're at number 10, Planning Commission vacancy. We have a Planning Commission vacancy, and
Yes,
Ms. Odom, do you want to
I will take this.
take this?
Okay. So just so you can all see here in front of you, and this is in your backup.
Put your mic a little closer to you.
Excuse me?
Your mic.
Oh, sorry. We had a full member, David Lancaster, resign his position effective 8/26. His term expires January of 2022. And currently we have Dusty Walters, who was recently appointed as first alternate, and she's eligible for full membership. And we do not have any other applications. So what we're asking council to do is to consider moving our alternate to the full-time vacancy and further approving her appointment for a consecutive 3-year term beginning in January, so we don't have to turn around and bring this back to you in just a few months. And this can be put on the consent agenda.
Any comments?
I agree.
Everybody agree? Please put it on the consent agenda. Very good. We go to number 11, lease number LEA 2021-01, renewal sublease with the Division of State Lands for the Little League ball field. It's my understanding, and I do not have an in-depth understanding, that we have a 5-year lease agreement with the state of Florida that we lease the land and then we sublease it to the Little League. And this is the continuation or to renew that lease for, I think, another 5 years, correct?
We've asked for longer. We'll see if we get more than 5 years, but 5 years at a minimum.
Okay. Is there any discussion on this?
And this would be, our request would be to author, the council to authorize the mayor to sign a lease agreement when it arrives. So that we wouldn't necessarily need to bring it back to council.
I would agree that it should go on the consent agenda.
And that the mayor will sign it within like 5 days of getting it back.
Upon receipt.
Yeah, upon
Or soon
receipt.
thereafter.
Okay. We're taking real good care of the Little League lately, and I think we all feel real good about that.
Yes.
Go to number 12, America Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, Coronavirus Local Fiscal Recovery Fund Grant Agreement number AGR 2021-26. So Jan, I'm going to have to turn this one over to you.
Council, this is what was briefly discussed at our budget workshop for Troy's road projects. The federal government has made available millions of dollars across the U.S. strictly for infrastructure. There are limited uses for these funds. They can only be used for water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure projects. It's been allocated to the state of Florida and municipalities and counties based on population. Dunnellon's share of these funds comes to $921,571. These funds will be distributed over the course of 12 months. So as soon as we do receive a grant agreement, they will disperse the funds. The goal is by December, we'll get 50% of the funds. And then within 12 months, we'll receive the other 50%. We have to identify projects. They have to be identified within 2 years and the funds spent within 5 years. So we're looking for, as soon as the agreement is received, that we sign this and we get a fully executed agreement, we can receive our funds. And Troy, we've briefly talked about stormwater projects, because stormwater, if it's applicable to, I believe it's the Clean Water Act, it is a viable project that these funds can be used for. So that's our goal, is to aim for stormwater. And it really goes hand in hand with our current stormwater asset mapping grant agreement with SwiftMud, where SwiftMud is identifying all our assets, its condition, and from that grant, projects were to be identified and prioritized as to need that these funds can be used towards. So the timing is actually perfect for these funds.
Troy, do you have anything we'd like to add to that?
I think I've already spent that money. That's how excited I was when I told we were getting it. But no, I have already begun discussions with the engineers. We've already started scouting throughout the city using some of the information that the current program has identified, and found out that another benefit is the more the city invests in projects, when we get additional grants, it shows good, we have a better opportunity of getting a grant. So when we're done with the stormwater asset mapping, we apply for the larger grants to fix all the issues identified. If the city has showed an interest in repairing some of those issues, bumps us up the list. So we're ready to go. If we get this money, we can have it identified in less than 2 years and ready to spend that money in 5 years.
Excellent. So is this something we can move to the consent agenda?
Yes.
Thank you, coronavirus, one good thing.
Very good. That's some good news. We can certainly use it. All right, please, Ms. Odom, put that on the consent agenda for Monday. We go to number 13 now, ordinance number ORD 2021-03, adoption of Marion County animal control regulations. I'm just going to make a few words about this and then turn it over to Troy. Basically, it's us making an agreement with the county where we finally have a animal control program. It's been kind of ad hoc up to this point. Quite excited about it. I know when we do have problems with animal control, we really need to tighten up the ship on this, and I think this is a real positive step forward. Troy, can you make some comments on this?
I can make this very brief. Basically, by signing into this agreement, we streamline the serviceability, getting quicker response to our citizens. It is uniform countywide. Every municipality or every district in the county is going with Marion County Services. And Andrew has done very well in making sure that it's not in conflict with our current ordinances. In fact, it adjusts our current ordinance to just adopting the Marion County. And it still allows us to keep the option of keeping chickens or making adjustments. We just don't do that through animal control. We do it through code enforcement. Okay? So I fully support this. For the last 3 years that I've been working hand in hand with Marion County Animal Control, I can tell you I'm answering the phone at 2 o'clock in the morning, at midnight to give authorization for Marion County to come in and do something. This right here allows them to receive the calls direct, respond immediately, and it's not a huge impact on our budget. In fact, it's still a significant cost savings compared to doing it ourselves.
Excellent.
Okay?
Andrew, this is going to require an ordinance. Can you kind of give us briefly what we need to do to get this started?
Sure. So what you're looking at right here is actually what needs to get done to be started. And this is the actual ordinance itself, which is a prerequisite to signing the agreement. So what is happening right now, what this ordinance does, just as Troy described, this adopts Marion County's ordinance verbatim. It's my understanding that that's what the county is requiring in order to provide the services. So you see just in this first article here, just an adoption of that. Article 2 has been renamed, just specific to chicken keeping, and everything else has been deleted and cleared out because Marion County's ordinance is extremely comprehensive. So chicken keeping is really the only thing that survives, in addition to some of the birding rules in Article 3, which really aren't relevant. And so they're not in this ordinance because they will stay exactly like they are. So what would happen here is this ordinance would, on Monday, you'd be providing direction to move it to planning. Planning would need to review it because there are some use changes in there and some requirements regarding fencing and so forth, which essentially amount to land development regulations. There's slight changes. So they would review it for comprehensive plan consistency. Then it would come back to you for first and second reading. And immediately following second reading, the city could adopt the whatever incarnation of I haven't seen the agreement yet, but the agreement with Marion County to provide the services.
Okay. So, Ms. Odom, would you put this on the agenda for Monday?
Andrew, do we need an actual motion to move it forward to planning?
No, at this time you could do it simply by consensus or, there's no, the ordinance could have started at the planning level. So
Right.
you don't need a motion per se.
Okay. So we'll just make sure this gets on the planning commission agenda.
So we have a consensus.
Yes, sir.
All right. All right. We do. Very good. Thank you, Troy, and thank you, Andrew, for your report.
Thank you, Council.
Okay, now we go to item number 14, Blue Run Park, proposed ordinance number ORD 2021-02, Blue Run Park rules and regulations. This is a continuation of the in-depth study discussions we've had with multiple workshops and still many steps to go before any ordinance can be passed. Possibly we might have another workshop on this, then it's going to have to go to the Planning Commission. It's going to have to come back out of the Planning Commission, come back to council, and we're going to have 2 readings separated with public notices. So this gives you an idea what it takes to get an ordinance passed like this. So Andrew, did you want to just jump in with some of the changes, or would you like me to summarize where we're at and where we're trying to be?
Whatever your preferences, Mayor, I think whatever your preferences, and I can just ask your questions if you'd like me to.
Okay.
Or I can present.
All right. Council, the good news, we're not going to start at the top and go through the whole list again.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So, Andrew, maybe we can do it this way. I'll say the parts of it that we had to rework the wording, and maybe you can verify that we have it correct. If you go to 64D, the unauthorized motorized vehicles are prohibited beyond the parking area. I think we just rectified that by including the government vehicles, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Correct.
So we're going to take that off the list of things to be done. So that one's done. Then the one that I think needs a little work, if you go to I-75, the statement fishing is prohibited. So we're going to try to rework the management plan and make it where we can have fishing in the interior pond.
Yes, that's correct. That's the next item on tonight's agenda.
Okay. Very good. Then we go to Q93, the area where the bike path and the river access ramp converge. Pedestrians have the right of way. And we worked that language somehow. You remember what we put there?
On the version that's in the agenda, which is the most up-to-date version, cyclists and other individuals utilizing any other form of conveyance shall yield to pedestrians. And the language is simplified for the signage at the park.
Okay, so I think we're good on that one now. You can take that off the list. 98S, individuals shall comply with the city's noise regulations. It's codified in section 42-3 in the Code of Ordinance of the city of Dunnellon. I think you included the broad definition of that on the national parks, including soundscape, correct?
That's right. Soundscape language has been added.
So I believe council is good with that. And just keep in mind, just because I'm saying council is good with that, this is still discussion. What we're trying to do is just winnow this list down to what we're in agreement with and what still needs to be discussed. We go to 106A, the river access ramp is for the use of kayakers, paddlers, and tubers. Entering or exiting the river, swimmers may utilize the ramp, but must yield to kayakers, paddlers, and tubers. We've kind of gone back and forth on that.
What line?
This would be 106A.
Okay, thank you.
I think council in their previous,
Yeah, that's a different one then. You're reading up an old
okay,
one.
find the one that talks about
It's section 4678, river access ramp rules and
Line
regulations.
112.
112? Okay, go to 112.
Okay.
We've had 2 or 3 of these. I'm going from my original notes. Council has gone back and forth on this one, and it seemed to be the feeling of council in the discussions last time that preventing people from swimming from the ramp would be basically unenforceable. That if someone walked down the ramp with a bathing suit with the intention to swim, and you tell them you cannot swim, but if someone walks down, if that same person with the same bathing suit walks down the ramp holding a tube, they can enter the water and they can swim. So I really don't see, in my opinion, how putting a no swimming from the ramp can even be enforced, including those that are returning from their tubing trip that oftentimes put their kayak or tube on the ramp and go back and swim in the water. So I think it was council's opinion at that time to not address the swimming or whatever. Where are we with that?
That's where it left off, and I want to seek some reassurance from FDEP. So at the last meeting, I indicated that I'm going to be contacting them. I have contacted them. I'm waiting to speak to them a bit more on that, identify any potential issues.
Okay, and then I think the commercial aspect,
Line 118 or new one.
118,
Yes, sir.
and I believe that's a big portion of what you're going to be talking about. So I'll just leave that up to you. So I said what I have to say, and I'll turn it over to you now.
Okay, direction I received as far as the prohibition on commercial use, this will largely stay the same. Some of the language from the previous alternate language, if you're looking at tonight's agenda, can be reworked into the document. And I am looking to bring you language that would essentially remove taxi cabs and won't use the statutory form, but essentially Uber and Lyft, the ride share, so people can still be picked up there, because I know that would create an enforcement issue. So I'll be bringing back some proposed language, and then if there's any suggestions at that point, once I bring it back, we can rework anything that needs to be reworked at that point.
Okay. So what you're talking about is just adding to it the consideration of what you do about taxis, Uber, and certain
Right,
things like that.
essentially, C would utilize so if we're looking at this, line 29, that's C, that would basically say what commercial use is not, and that would have that exemption. C would essentially become D, but using the language over in the comment next door, some similar language there, basically mirroring the county's interlocal agreement and ensuring that there's not an issue with, an infringement on their rights. Neither of the language, the two choices do that, but I think the feedback that I've gotten is just that the previous language is a bit clear for those purposes.
Okay, and I think the portion of this section that is the one that maybe we still need to talk more about is C, the provision of services by Marion County for water-based recreation and/or other passive recreation programs is exempt from this section. And then the language that continues on beyond that, I think we're still trying to come up with language that tightens that up.
Yeah, essentially be, like I said, very similar to the comment out to the side, if you're looking at the agenda, if you have the agenda version. The provision of service by Marion County, basically the same first sentence, and such exemption shall include transportation services performed by Marion County when performed solely for such water-based recreation and passive recreation programs. The language itself would be a bit more specific to make it very, very clear that it's Marion County or Marion County's contractor, just so any layperson who might be reading it, doesn't understand the difference between licensing or permitting businesses and a county contractor. Ordinance will make that very, very clear. So in other words, just letting everybody know that just because somebody has a commercial pass does not mean that they can come in and utilize the parking areas for pickup.
Right. Well, one more thing, and then I'll give it to you, Luis. The one thing I think council is looking for is giving the county the absolute assurance that we are in agreement with the original agreements about their use of KP Hole and how it connects to Blue Run Park. But at the same time, to eliminate the unauthorized commercial use of Blue Run Park.
Exactly.
And that's what we're looking. Currently right now we have unauthorized use of Blue Run Park. It has nothing to do with the county. The county has basically said, city, this is for you to deal with. This isn't our cross to carry. So we want to give the county the assurance that we're as good as gold with our agreement with them, but at the same time, we want to stop the unauthorized use of that park. And there is language in our agreements that commercial use can happen if there's an agreement between the city and FCT. Currently, there is no such agreement in place, and there's commercial use being allowed in that park. Correct?
Understood, yes. And that language will essentially reference exactly the ILL language that's been in place for a number of years.
Okay, very good. Okay, I promised you 3 times. Excuse me.
I just wanted to agree with you on C, because that is of some concern to me when I'm looking at it. And the tightening of the language means that we will be coming back to that. Is that what we're saying?
That is correct.
Thank you.
And then I think the last one, Andrew, was, I think we got it where everybody was satisfied with it, was our language on the firearms.
Yes, my understanding that's satisfactory now.
So we can eliminate that. Okay, so the question I have is where we're at and where we need to go.
So based on the feedback,
What do we need to do? We're getting this thing pretty close now. So what do we need to do?
Sure. And sorry, I didn't mean to step on your question there. The next step at the October workshop, you will have this has essentially been a template ordinance that's been moving on from a template ordinance to a work in process ordinance. So at the October workshop, you'll be seeing a complete draft ordinance. That means there will be a complete set of whereas clauses that are going to flesh out legislative intent for your review. And then substantively, all of the changes that you've requested to be made will be made for your review. And at that workshop, you can review it publicly and provide any further direction. Ultimately, as you stated earlier, Mayor, at some point when council is comfortable with it, it will need to go through planning and work its way through the planning commission from there, back to council for ultimate adoption.
So I'll get to you next, Vice Mayor. So this would be something that still would take a lot of time to go through all the whereases and whatever. So I cannot see tackling this gorilla within the regular agenda in a workshop. So we would have to consider at a workshop that's coming up, whatever, starting early or whatever, and just scheduling this. Because if we, like tonight with 20 items, if we were just going to go from top to bottom with this, we couldn't do it. So we would almost have to have another special workshop to pretty much try to finalize this.
Sure, if that's council's wish. And I don't know what is on the, if staff yet knows what's on the October workshop, but
don't we have a budget
workshop,
workshop, a special budget workshop? Do we have?
Budget hearing.
Huh?
It's a budget
It's a
hearing.
budget hearing. Our workshop is on the 6th, October 6th. I'm sorry. Hold on, I'm looking at September. Yeah.
Yeah, you're
it's the
right.
6th. Yeah. So you could start earlier in the day if you wanted to have a special workshop prior to your regular workshop, just to focus on this one agenda item. It's entirely up to how the council wants to do it.
Well, I would like to do that. I'd like to do like we've done before. We can start at 3:30. If we get done early, we can take a little break before our regular workshop.
All right.
Let's put this to bed.
Speaking of putting this to bed, we did receive a letter from the county. So I think that needs to be addressed before we move off of this subject. And again, I understand their issue, and I've even thought about what happens if we did have an emergency, what would we do? And again, I've watched maybe too much NCIS or something, and worried about where would we get the tubers off the river if there was, God forbid, something horrible going on at the tubers exit that would require us not to be allowed, not to have people get off there. Having an extra exit strategy plan would be a good idea, and I think that is something that we could work with the state and the county with, but I do think we need to address this. So, Mr. Hand, can you discuss this? I've read over it while I was sitting here.
Sure. Do you want me to summarize it, or how
However
would you
you
like me
want to
to
do it.
address it?
You do you.
Sure. Okay. Yesterday, late in the afternoon, I received the correspondence from Attorney Minter of the county, Marion County Attorney. And basically, this letter mirrors the same objections that the county had from the letter from the county manager that was received, I believe, the week before. Is that right, Mandy?
September 1st.
Expressing concerns and so forth. And, part of the concerns, I believe, is that that the park is singled out. And of course, what's reiterated within the letter is the county's commitment that has been made over the years to ensuring the success of the park, as well as the rights that the county has via the perpetual conservation easement in place and the interlocal agreement. I know it mentioned the conservation easement. I don't believe the letter mentioned the ILA. Nevertheless, the county does have those rights. So that is the concern, at least on the county's end. And ultimately, the concern therein lies that the city may exercise authority via the city's police chief that is in conflict with what's guaranteed to the county via those documents.
So how can we put their minds at ease, or what wording could we put in here? Again, this is for the God forbid incidents. It's not because we think there's too many people at the river and we just want to close it down for the day. I see this language as, this is the unforeseeable, OMG, let's protect everybody. They can't even get off. They need to get off, 4 lots before this. I mean, something. That's where I see our position on this. But I know the county has some issues, and I just want to make sure their minds are clear. Or what wording would we need to do? Should we put some examples thereof that, it's a endangerment to life and limb kind of thing? I don't know.
Well, that's within council's discretion, and the county has proposed some language to essentially exempt their practices and I don't know correct what the best word for it is, but their business model, what their activities from the ordinance. So they have provided that. In any case, the language based on health, safety, welfare here, this is typical language that you see within codes within other counties and codes within cities. I believe this language is borrowed from Hillsborough County. Since Ms. Kovach suggested some language regarding the firearms presumption, I looked very closely at that one. So it's nothing unusual. It generally applies to all parks. And this ordinance, of course, was created in concept to apply to Blue Run Park. But in any case, this language can be moved over so it applies to every park in the city. And I think it should. As far as if council wishes to narrow it down and so forth, I think, really the concern, or not the concern, that's not the right word, but police chief in making a decision, would be cognizant of the agreements that are in place. And again, as council's discussed, it's essentially whether it's a declared emergency or not, some sort of emergency situation. And so that discretion would be exercised accordingly. If council wanted to narrow it, that's certainly an option. And, the language could stay. City council could work with the county over a period of time to develop emergency plans for, whatever might arise. And if council wanted to modify the ordinance or have that reflected as such, that could be done as well. So you have a number of different avenues that the council could elect to pursue on this. But at a very minimum, in the draft ordinance that you'll see next month, I would move it over to the general section to be applicable to all parks.
That makes sense.
Right. I think that's very good, putting it with all parks. And I think it's rational for someone to accept that if you have agreements in place, you have a legal responsibility to follow those agreements. And if you don't follow those agreements legally, you're susceptible for a challenge. But we're talking about something outside that. We're talking about a situation or a park that is our park, one that we're liable for. If a situation arises that creates a danger, a safety issue, that the city should have the right to do what it takes to make that park safe. If that means you can't walk on the trail because there's a fallen tree or a tree that's getting ready to fall, so you close that part of the park to prevent someone from going on the trail, it's only reasonable. If there's something that's going on with the boating and the tubing that clearly is a danger, that if it goes unabated as it currently is going, and you can't do anything about that, even though you know there's a danger, and you're responsible and liable for the outcome of that danger, to take a position that there's nothing you can do because you have an agreement, I don't think a reasonable person would agree that that's the way things should be done. So what we're talking about is something similar to what happened a year and a half ago with the COVID situation, where there were emergency situations where you were supposed to have social distancing. And the use of Blue Run Park, as it was being used, it was impossible to keep social distancing, even though there was a mandate that if groups of 10 or more people were together, you couldn't have 10 or more together. And if you were together, you had to be 6 feet apart. Well, that was not being done. So we had a clear and present danger that within the park, we were jeopardizing people's health with not adhering to the COVID regulations. So what the chief did based on that is he contacted the county and says, if we don't do something about this, we have a clear and present danger to the general welfare of the people that are using the river and using the ramp. At that time, I don't recall the county coming back and saying, you can't do that because we have an agreement. It's my recollection that the county says, yeah, that could be a problem. Let's see what we can do about it. So what this is to put the city in a position that when there's something that needs to be done to protect the public, especially on top of that, that we're liable, legally liable for that. To me, this is just rational and reasonable. What I have to say on that.
And I wonder, should we add the word sheriff in it and/or sheriff, like Dunnellon Police and/or County Sheriff? I don't know if that would make people happier.
Well, I think
Can our commissioner speak on this?
Commissioner, if you would like to speak, please speak.
Commissioner Kathy Bryant, 601 Southeast 25th Avenue, Ocala, Florida, 34471. I think we have this happen frequently when we are doing agreements. And I think the most important thing to remember is while we all know what the thought process is behind the language that is being proposed now, in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, we aren't going to be here. And there's going to be a different group of people sitting here. And that is why you see the request by the county to add the language. We have this happen at our parks now. If something happens at one of our parks on Lake Weir and law enforcement has to come in, we abide by what law enforcement does and we shut down. And it's just contractual language that protects everybody. And I think the additional sentence that was asked to be added, again, is just contractual language that you would see any business ask for in the private sector, just to protect everybody involved. We would never go head to head with a law enforcement request. We would always follow what they would ask us to do because they have that authority. And Councilwoman Hanchar, I think you make a good point. You could just add the word law enforcement in there instead of it just being the Dunnellon Police, because you never know. It could be at the request of a sheriff's office. It could be at the request of a public safety entity other than law enforcement. Maybe you have fire and EMS that has to come in there for some reason. So that I think would be a good addition to it, as well as the simple sentence that's been requested by the county that excludes us.
Thank you.
That's, what we would again request, and I believe that's what Mr. Minter conveyed in his letter to Attorney Hand.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. So Andrew, what do you think about the inclusion of law enforcement rather than chief of police?
I think it's up to council, and the reason, you know, part of this is law enforcement derives its authority not from this ordinance, and certainly the sheriff doesn't derive its authority from this ordinance. This ordinance is just reiterating something that is understood and, you know, guaranteed via the Constitution and by statute, depending on the agency. So the agencies already have this authority. If you want to change it to law enforcement to state accordingly, we can certainly do that. You know, we can add other safety entities if there's a fire violation, something along those lines. That's really up to council. The language as it states right now, it is chief of police or an authorized representative has the ability to close the park. Typically what you'll see in other ordinances is there's a parks director, someone along those lines. And those are the individuals who authorize typically to close parks and so forth in counties and cities. Because it's understood that police and law enforcement can, if need be. So I have no issue with, you know, modifying the ordinance to include the county's language, to have it stay as is, or to include general law enforcement. Ultimately, you know, law enforcement derives authority elsewhere. So we can make it state whatever you'd like it to say.
Well, there's two suggestions by the county. One is the inclusion of law enforcement, and then the exclusion of this is applicable to the county, which I'm not there. Doesn't make any sense to have this and then to say to the county, you're excluded if we want to close the park. That doesn't make any, that's the way I'm interpreting, that.
So that very statement right there is going to make me question on, I mean, this is being presented as to it would only be in a health or safety reason that you would close the park. So what other reason would you have to close the park what other reason would you have to close the park?
There is no other reason.
Okay, so then why would that language not be okay to have in there?
Why is the language necessary?
As I stated earlier, you know what your intent is, I know what my intent is, but unless you have it clearly written in that, in your ordinance, a council sitting here 5 years from now, or a commission 5 years from now, might not know what the intent was today. And it just clearly states it, and it protects everyone, all of the partners.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Mr. Andrew,
you.
can you read that statement that they want added?
It's right here.
Randy, do you have that letter?
Where is it? I'm sorry, I tried finding it real quick and I just couldn't.
It's top of this second page here. Such authority shall not extend to approved governmental uses, including approved governmental provision of park services.
Trying to think of the way that it's.
So what we're looking at is such authority, the authority of the chief, that's the authority. So such authority of the chief shall not extend to the approved governmental uses, which is the tuber takeout, including approved governmental provisions of park services. So that sentence says the chief would not have the authority, based on safety issues, to do something that inhibits the approved governmental uses that are agreed to. So that inoculates closing the park for safety, which would be all-inclusive of everybody.
And that's right. I just don't know if maybe adding exactly what you're saying for Lim, I'm doing the OMG circumstance, if something like that would be, because I understand what we're saying is that, well, if the chief says we can close it down, but the county still gets to come in and pick up, then what's the point of saying it at all? But maybe if we could say something under the circumstances of fire, flood, the OMG moments, and not because there's a tree fallen or, something of that nature, because that would just be blocking the park off for a little spot. But really and truly the 911 true emergency. I don't know if the county would look at something like that a little bit better, adding it in. That would be the only reason why, if it was a 911 emergency. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So I think this is what you have to keep in mind. Until we have some kind of
An interlocal agreement or an alternative plan on how we get people off of that river if there's an emergency, you can't close that park for us to get people off the river.
Right, and that's a great point, that then we need to go ahead and start sitting down with Jim.
And that should be pretty easy to do.
Chris.
We should be able to talk to our partners about that, but we've also thought other things would be pretty easy to do through the years with our partner to try to get done, to make things happen, but everything seems to take time. And, it could take us another season to get something worked out. You just can't completely go, okay, the park is closed, and then we've got people on the river. Because we've got to be able to get people off of that river if they're on that river.
And I understand that. And again, I'm just thinking, God forbid there's an active shooter at the river. Sorry, you're closed.
In that case, law enforcement would be there and we would have to find something else.
That's the only thing that I think you're right, we do need to make that emergency plan. I thought about that about 3:00 this morning. Can't believe we haven't thought of it before. And shut the river down from the Withlacoochee end as well. So it's not just you, or not you, the county. So that's kind of where I'm looking at it. Maybe it's too naive looking, but that's how I'm looking at it.
We don't want to be put in a position where a tree falls and you've closed the park because there's a tree across something and we can't maintain our operation.
That would be Troy getting out there with the chainsaw very quickly. Sorry, Troy.
I mean, that example has been used, or whatever the example would be. I mean, we need, our operation depends on being able to get tubers off at Blue Run Park. And unless there is an extreme emergency, we have to be able to get people out of that river. And that's where we get them out at right now.
And that's the only, extreme emergency was the only real reason this was put in.
Well, COVID is an example of something that no one heard of a couple years ago.
That was an extreme emergency.
And that happens. But Andrew, isn't it true that an ordinance is just the skeleton? It's from what you work from. So the simple statement of putting this in as an ordinance could stand on its own, and then you could put in the rules, regulations of how you go about that.
Mr.
Every
Mayor?
ordinance that you have does not describe exactly how you implement the ordinance. That can be done later.
And if I may, if the placement of the language, and Attorney Hand, maybe you can help me out here, but if the placement of the language that the county is requesting is what is giving you heartburn, maybe there is just language added to the ordinance that states protection to the county and the county's operation. Maybe there's a place in the ordinance where you could just put a simple statement that says that.
I'm just going on direction of council.
I know, but I'm
So
maybe saying
the
maybe you
heartburn
can
and so forth,
suggest
I'm
something.
receiving feedback. So if council wants me to change it, I can do that, but I just need direction and where to go with it.
I can only speak for myself. I'm one of the 5 votes. Where I'm at is that language that would give the city the ability to close the park. As the county, I'm sure, has the ability to close their parks based on clear and present dangers. We want to have the same right to close our park when we have a clear and present danger and not be stifled because we have a interlocal agreement that could prevent us from doing it. No one in their wildest imagination would close the park knowing you have 200 tubers on the way to the tuber exit, and we're just going to close the park now. So all we're asking for is to have the same authority that every other park, I'm sure in the county, has, other cities has, that they have the ability to close their parks based on what they perceive to be an endangerment to those that are using the park.
Is there any wording like that in the KP whole management plan, I wonder?
I don't know.
Maybe we can get with Mr. Couillard.
Well, we'll look forward to what you bring forward, and I'm sure that our county attorney will be keeping a close eye on it, and we'll just hash this out, hopefully before your next workshop.
If council wants me to, I can look at, I think one plausible solution based on the discussion that I've heard back and forth is to move this over to general parks and create a special direction for Blue Run Park, mentioning that the city recognizes these agreements, some language into that and so forth, considering it, and, you know, when making decisions, we'll consider the number of tubers or who is on the river and consult with the county before closing the park. That might give the county some comfort in there because at least they're getting the call. And I know from, you know, from knowledge of how law enforcement works, they would be getting the call, but if it provides, you know, some heartburn alleviation to have it within the ordinance, I can certainly place that in there. And it really doesn't change what's going on. It doesn't change the fact that really the sheriff and the chief of police derive their authority elsewhere.
I think possibly what the county is asking for is if that's the situation would arise, that they would be given some sort of notice.
I thought that was a no-brainer.
So, well, that's what we're talking about. That might be something that might be the middle ground.
Sure.
Based on the situation, that the county would be given proper and due notice before anything like that would happen.
Sure. And if council would like me to respond to Mr. Minter, you know, and engage in some sort of exchange as to drafting that language and seeing what they think about it, I can do that and perhaps bring you back options or bring you back some language, you know, it's just in line with what we've discussed. However, council would like to proceed on it.
Because going back to the chief, and I'm only going by what I remember, is the chief contacted the county and basically gave the county notice that if we don't do something by the 4th of July or whatever it was, this is what I'm going to have to do. So the county in this the previous situation was given notice. And if we had some sort of language in there that would give the county some sort of notice, depending on the severity of the situation. For instance, if we have an active shooter in the park, you know, how much notice do you give with something like that? But possibly that would give the county the comfort that if they felt that we were doing something rash, it would give them the time that they needed to respond to it.
That's easily done.
God forbid.
Okay. So
Safe
Mandy, where
travels.
are we at? We were going to talk about putting this on as a part of a workshop to give us some extra time. You can see how much time we put into this stuff.
You guys want to start at 3:30 on October 6th, have a special workshop in advance of your regular workshop. That
I
was
think that would be good.
what you said before.
Yes. Okay.
We're going to do it on the river.
And Andrew, that will give you the time you need, hopefully.
Yes, more than enough.
Okay. Okay. We're at number 15, correct? Resolution number RES 2021-16, readopting the March 2008 Blue Run Park Management Plan as amended. I guess we just went over to you, Andrew.
Sure. So this one is, we discussed this a little bit earlier when we were looking at the fishing aspect of the ordinance. What this resolution does, and of course this resolution needs to go through a few channels. But once it gets back to council, after having been reviewed by Marion County, the Office of Greenway and Trails, by the River Group, this would amend the plan to allow fishing in the interior pond, striking the language that's there presently, and that's all it does. But again, it needs to go to our RRC, all the partners. They can take a look at it, provide comment and so forth. Because there is not a amendment process within the management plan, this seems to be the best way to do it. I think I saw some comments before on just consulting with FCT to change the plan. This memorializes it and readopts the plan with its changes to make sure it's all up to, as up to date as it can be, and adopted in following at least some sort of procedure. So this would go to planning and then come back to council after it's been reviewed by the partners.
Would this in any way inhibit the progress we're trying to make in getting the ordinance?
I don't think so. It depends on how fast, well, the answer is an unqualified, no, I don't believe so. But, it is being submitted to, these different entities and so forth for their comment. And, seeing the change just being fishing in the interior pond and being as that was in the original February 2008 management plan before it was changed, I don't believe it's very controversial. But of course, that may not be the case. And additionally, some of these entities may take a while to get back to the city. But I think just with a call to, try to move it along, I don't think that this is something that would take a long time in any of the agencies.
This is directly tied into fishing in the center pond.
This is the only thing that this resolution deals with, correct? And the benefit of, this, if council elects to go ahead and start circulating this now, this process is being started while we're still waiting for the next draft of the ordinance. So there's a whole month this will get out ahead of the ordinance. And the ordinance takes, several readings to go through. So I would forecast that this would be completed well in advance of time for the ordinance to be adopted. I would hope so in any case.
So what happens if this isn't resolved quickly and easily and it's holding up the advancement of the ordinance? What happens then?
Well, it doesn't need to hold up advancement of the ordinance. The ordinance would just need to be changed so that fishing is still prohibited. Until the management plan is changed, the ordinance needs to be, needs to match the language or essentially the requirements in the management plan. So the ordinance could just be changed back to that temporarily until it was resolved and then changed once again. But I think out of all the provisions within the ordinance, fishing is probably one of the ones that's that are that I would view as less important than certainly some of the other provisions that we've discussed.
Okay. Well, I think after all the time everybody has put into this council and RRC and members, to get hung up on whether or not we can fish. And I mean, you know, I would, I'm really looking before the end of the year to get this resolved. I would like to have this speaking for myself, before we get into the holiday season, when things don't really move along real well because of Christmas, Thanksgiving, New Year's, and all that sort of stuff. So what I'm hoping is that we can get this all done before we get into that time of the year.
I think the process would be essentially for council to go ahead and give the green light and draft a cover letter to each of the other entities and simply say this is a priority for the city to move along some legislation, and then just call and follow up. And if there's a hiccup in that, well, the ordinance can be adopted, you know, as I said, without the fishing provision, without that change, and then always modified later.
Hey, what do you need council to do right now?
Really, at this point in time, just a consensus to go ahead and, well, because we've had a lot of discussion on this, I think it might be wise to go ahead and put this on as an agenda item for Monday. We'd only be getting a 3-day jump, and that way the public has the ability to discuss it, because this is a very public and important topic. That would probably be the best procedure.
Can I put it on as a consensus agenda item? Or no?
It could go on the consent agenda item, but usually, you know, we're not looking for, those are usually topics that the public may not wish to discuss. But if somebody wanted to talk about it, it could be pulled. So consent would be fine. It's just really just to start the process. It's not to adopt a resolution.
Well, I'm all for putting it on the consensus agenda.
Consent agenda, yeah. Okay. Anybody else?
Lisa? Okay, excellent. Very good. All right, we're at number 16. I think have we already taken care of this? Ms. Odom, council discussion, community development
Yes,
manager.
I did not expect you guys to act so quickly on that, so I had it at the end for discussion to move it forward Monday, so I think we're good there.
So we're good. Okay, council comments. Ms. Kenny, you haven't spoken too much at all tonight, so we'll start off with you. How about some council comments?
Well, I really don't have anything to add. I thought it was a good meeting. And nothing to add.
Okay.
Not a thing. I said all I'm going to say.
Y'all need to talk one more second.
Ms. Covich?
Oh, what you got?
Yeah, I would just like to ask council to do some research between now and Monday's meeting on how Florida DEP, water management districts have been controlling, quote, what the term Anderson's lawyer used. He said you cannot turn off the flow of visitors to your river. No, but we certainly can control those that flow of visitors, and it's been evidenced by recent actions with KP Hole and State Park. So I would like to ask council, do some homework to see what other rivers, the example would be the Itchitucknee River and also the Weeki-Wachee, what they have done in the way of slowing down the number of visitors coming to the parks, to their rivers, to prevent degradation of those rivers. Thank you.
Okay, Vice Mayor?
All righty. I get my names right here. The pretty green one that y'all received from me, this came to me from our FDOT State Secretary, Kevin Anyway, the FDOT State Secretary. I'd like to ask that our city staff put this on. It's Mobility Week from October 29th to November 5th. It's just all the different multimodal transportation and safety, and just be a partner with FDOT and encourage people to, bike maybe to work, or really work on taking precautions out on our roads, and just partner with them. And we'll be getting some more information. I apologize, this was sent out to me on August 27th, and for some odd reason it got into my spam. It was my personal account, not my city account. So I literally pulled it up right before I got here. Michelle, thank you for pulling it up for me. So I will get more information, but I would like for us, there are going to be some different events that will be taking place throughout the state and some virtual webinars. So, and I'd like to also give this to the Chamber of Commerce to get them involved as well with our bicycles and such here in the city. So, but anyway, just something I'd like for us to put on, have the staff put on our website, if that's okay with everybody. Okay, and then the second thing I gave y'all was from the TPO, just the organization, the overall congestion and the performances. And it's just some data for y'all to look at and to see. There's some congested quarters. We don't need anybody to tell us where it's congested in the city of Dunnellon. We all drive on the roads, but we are part of the study and the future study and the congestion mitigation. So it's just some information that it had been in a packet that I'd given everybody to look at months ago, but this was presented at the last city council meeting or TPO meeting, so I just printed it up for y'all as well to take a look at. So that's my council comments. And this mask is driving me insane. It's making my tongue feel like a leather piece.
I hate them.
Oh, I hate this one.
I just have one comment. The FDOT had a meeting in this room yesterday. Troy might be able to talk a little bit about it. You actually weren't in the meeting yesterday.
I was here.
You were here? Okay, okay, very good. And I'm not gonna take Troy's thunder. There was a good group of people, mostly the business owners, that would be impacted by the changing of the stoplight. Not so much the changing of the stoplight, the pedestrian cross. We're going to move it this way toward the gazebo, but it would change the way you can make turns into the businesses that are on the east side of the street. There was a lot of concern that the configuration that the state put together would force people to make U-turns in front of the Blue Gator in order to come back the opposite way to enter their businesses. They voiced that pretty strongly, and I'm sure the state heard their concerns. What may happen from that, I'm not sure, although the state said they were quite surprised that normally they don't get this much pushback. And I said, welcome to Dunnellon, right? So Troy, you can go on with that if that's part of what you want to say.
It can be. Are we moving on to department head comments? Is that what you're asking, or you want?
If you want to just say something on.
Yes, I met out in the field.
Actually, I'm done. Everybody else is done. Go on with it.
Well, I'll carry on with that topic then. I did meet in the field yesterday afternoon about 3 o'clock with FDOT, the engineers and the individuals that were here. We also met with the property owner at the location that's in question. Very lengthy, very heavy discussion about making adjustments. So the state is working with the property owner and the tenants of the business to find a happy medium. And, but the state did make it very clear that their primary objective is the safety of the commuters and the pedestrians. But like the mayor said, I think they realize they have quite the opposition going on, so they will continue to reach out to them. So I would encourage the businesses, the residents, people that have concerns, to please document it and get it to FDOT. I know for a fact that FDOT responds by sheer numbers. They get 2 complaints, they're not going to do anything. You get 2,000 complaints, they'll look into it, right? Okay. But in either case, FDOT is determined to make a safer, better crosswalk and to take all the businesses into consideration. So we'll keep you informed. I think they announced their scheduled tentative completion was going to be sometime midsummer this year, 2022, this coming year. So As those updates come in, if I'm kept in the loop after this point, I will make sure I give it to Mandy and make sure that council is clearly kept up to date. Okay. You want me to go right into department head comments, or do you want to ask Mandy who she wants to have go first?
As long as you're at it.
Okay.
Finish up.
All right, you better buckle down. I got 10 minutes, right? 10 minutes. 10 minutes, all right.
Where are you sit?
So I actually sat here and prioritized everything. Number one, we've been talking about Cedar Street and Ohio Street, the repaving project. Everybody familiar? We have the engineering. We are ready to go out to bid. We have the engineering. Mandy, if you could just bring that up real quick. I need this. I had requested that this goes on as a walk-on. So we just received yesterday the final completion of the engineering and the design for the project and an updated estimated cost for the project from Kimley Horn. So what we're asking for is to allow us to continue moving forward, begin getting the package ready to go out to bid for this project. The original estimate for this project we had in our budget for $588,000. I think we spent a few thousand of that for the engineering. We have 540 something thousand carried over after October for this project. The new project estimated cost is at $393,000 and change.
Awesome.
150,000 less. Now, we did make a few adjustments to the design. Mandy, if you could pull up the design, I want to show council and give you an opportunity between now and Monday to review these documents. Mandy has sent them out to you, I believe. Right there. And feel free to reach out to me. I will make myself available all weekend for any questions that you guys have about these designs. You'll see the shaded area, the big parking lot area, that is our art gallery. The parking lot, the art gallery on Cedar Street. You'll notice that at the front door of the art gallery, there are 2 additional on-street parking, and across the street, 2 more. You'll notice by that aerial photo, it's a mud pit right now. They've abused that area, and we figured if they're going to continue to abuse it, anybody is abusing it, we'll turn it into on-street parking. Further south, along on the southeast side, you'll see a tree line there. We were going to put 6 additional on-street parking. However, we had to pull that from the project. I found out that the corner lot sold separately. There's another lot there that has an access coming out to that road. I did not want to run into a short tower way incident, seeing how FGUA has a lift station on the opposite street that hinders their access to property. All right, Mandy, if you'll go to the next photo. And this is Ohio Street. Just give you a brief one. Right here behind City Hall, that top picture is right here behind, adjacent to City Hall. We're adding in 2 on-street parking right in front of the employee parking area to the left of the screen. And behind Gruff's, we're adding in 3 on-street parking. As you leave tonight, if you drive out, you'll see backside of Gruff's where they get their deliveries. It's all tore up. We're going to add in 3 on-street parking. Next photo. Going down, Dr. Lamopoulos' office. The old doctor's office is at the top of the page. The bottom of the page is another doctor's office. No, Mandy, there you go, right at the picture I was referring to. There's 3 on-street parking being suggested for that area as well, and increasing the sidewalk to be a 4-way crosswalk for sidewalk and sidewalk repairs as needed in this project down all of Ohio Street. Next photo. One more. This here is crossing over from Pennsylvania over towards Walnut, Chestnut, in front of the Souls Harbor Church. Originally, I did have scheduled to put in 2 handicap parking spaces in front of Souls Harbor Church. That has been eliminated now that Souls Harbor is tentatively going up to market. Okay? And then as you go across Park Avenue to McKinney Avenue, it's the end of the project. You'll notice that all the driveway aprons throughout the project are being protected and restored as they are. or upgraded from dirt to at least asphalt or concrete. Yes.
Question, the one that's Park Avenue,
Mm-hmm.
so the Presbyterian Church is right here.
Yes.
So that apron right there, the first one, this one right here, that
Mhm.
goes into a backyard.
Right, so here's the purpose behind that. It was, that house actually faces Park Avenue, but
Correct.
there's not enough room between the sidewalk and the front of the house for them to safely park their vehicle. Park Avenue was just redone last year as part of the
Right.
CDBG grant project, and they're parking cars, you can see in the photo, there's a parked car in our right-of-way, which is actually a ditch and swale for stormwater. Now, they have a double gate that goes to the back of the property. That was their original driveway for that property. So we'll
Okay.
be at least encouraging them to use that apron to access the rear of the
Okay.
property. That's all I can do, right?
Okay, just, thanks.
And then, of course, there may be a couple of change orders based on these driveway locations after we speak with the residents, or if the residents have concerns if we're changing what's pre-existing. Okay? But we anticipate that the project estimate includes a contingency fund of about $65,000. And I'm pretty good. We're keeping our projects well within our budgets. So it's okay with council. I'd like to get with the engineers and move forward to get the bid packages ready to go or get out to bid. Okay?
You don't need anything from council. It's all done.
I need your consensus before I go out to bid.
Consent?
Consent.
Make it so.
Go forth and prosper.
All right. Last, very simple, quick items. Ernie Mills bathrooms will be closed starting next week and tentatively till the end of the month. We hope it's only going to be about a 2-week period, but it may be a 3-week period. Ernie Mills bathrooms are getting new floor coatings, new toilets, sinks, and divider walls. So a complete upgrade in the bathrooms. It's already been scheduled. Contractors are lined up to get started as early as the end of next week. I'm going to jump one over here. The pavilion at the City Beach, I have a meeting tomorrow afternoon to work with the contractor on the logistics of how to accomplish their task safely and not as an impact to the patrons that go out to the City Beach. He seems to think that he can finish the project during the week and not get into the weekend. So we may shut the beach for 3 to 4 days to isolate the work zone and reopen it for the weekend. But I'll be working with the contractor to ensure we keep it open on the weekends. It should only take him a week to finish the job. And my last thing I want to make council very well aware of, we have had a flooding issue in the back end of Vought Springs off of Cherokee Circle. That flooding, it disappears, it comes right back the first time we get it drizzle. I will be out there in the field tomorrow running tests on the storm drain systems and measuring the height of the river water compared to the water in the street to see if in fact, if it is a city storm drain issue or if the river levels are still high enough that it's seeking itself into the street. And
What
then I
time do you
work,
think you'll be out there tomorrow?
huh?
You have an idea what time you'll be out there tomorrow?
I could be out there first thing in the morning, or I could be out there mid-afternoon. It just
You
depends
just
on,
don't know.
I have no idea, but if you'd like to come with me, I'll call you when I'm heading.
Please do.
Because it's going to be very interesting. We're
Okay.
going to get muddy. We got to get in the water.
All right.
So, but please, on any of these projects, if the council or citizens have any questions, don't hesitate, reach out to me. I'll meet with you. The plans are always in my office on my desk. And I'd like to make one more suggestion for council to consider. When we're doing these road paving projects, just like we did the parking lot projects and CDBG projects, if you came to the FDOT meeting last night, you'll see they had posters with pictures of the projects and a tentative completion photo. I want to work with the engineers to make sure that we put those same type of posters here at City Hall before the projects break ground. Because as much as we talk about it, somebody's going to come out their front door on the first day the rollers show up to put asphalt down and scream and yell at me they had no idea this was coming. It's been 2 years in the planning. Agree?
Agree.
Very good. Council, I think that's it for now. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Troy. Very good. Ms. Odom, who would else? Jan?
I do. I just have one thing. Monday is your first public hearing to set your tentative millage, tentative budget. This is the first of two public hearings for adoption for a workable budget beginning October 1st. So get excited.
Okay.
3:30?
No, it's at 5:30.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
no,
can't
those
do
can't
that.
start early. The public hearings have to be held after 5 o'clock.
Good to know.
What else?
That's it.
You also have a CRA board meeting at 5 o'clock.
I knew there was something going on.
Monday,
5 o'clock Monday.
yes, to talk about the process for the surplus and disposition of the church property.
What time again is that?
That's at 5
5.
o'clock. 5
Just
o'clock
be
on
at 5,
Monday.
okay.
Mandy, do you have anything to report? No. All right. I think that takes care of department head comments. Go to number 19. Like I told everybody, we have 20 of them. We're at 19. City attorney comments.
I'll make it quick. I do not have anything tonight, sir.
Okay, but you have a lot of marching orders.
I have a lot of homework to do.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, what everyone in the audience has waited for to get to number 20, so you get your second chance to speak. Ms. Odom, do we have anybody signed up?
Yes, Mr. Gibbert.
A couple of things. Really, to go through all the issues that we heard about tonight with commercial use of Blue Run Park, that would take a very long presentation. There are many issues associated with that. I tried to bring up a few of them earlier today. But what Dunnellon does with this issue is going to determine really the future survival of the aquatic system and the visitor experience on Rainbow Run. Remember, the clearest water on Earth, globally significant natural resource. I mean, there's so many superlatives associated with the Rainbow River. It goes way beyond this council or way beyond our RC or any of us here in the city of Dunnellon. It goes way beyond that. This is a world treasure, and we have to look at it in that way. And we start loading up commercial use on the river, that deteriorates from what we're really, as good stewards of the river, really have a requirement to do. I had a couple of specific things. Andrew's now gone. I wanted to go back to 2008 and just read one line out of the 2008 management plan. Basically the same rules that we're talking about tonight, with maybe one or two exceptions. We've gone around with this, but the commercial use statement says, commercial use is prohibited except by written permission from the city of Dunnellon and approved by FCT. That's where we started this debate. Now we've gone backwards. Here's where we are tonight. This is the latest rendition of the draft ordinance. I'm looking at line 129, number C. We're talking about commercial use again. This section shall not be applicable to approved governmental uses, including approved governmental provision of park services. Notice what's missing in this. The word Dunnellon does not appear. So it could be that another governmental agency, Marion County will take for example, could add another commercial livery or another commercial use of Dunnellon would have no say over that. So this language is unacceptable, and I would urge all of you to vote against what's in this right now.
Mr. Bever, could you repeat that again for council?
The language?
Yes. And your rationale.
This section, am I going to go over it? Is this counting my time?
Yeah. I'll give you an extra minute.
This section shall not be applicable to approved governmental uses, including approved governmental provision of park services. The word Dunnellon is not mentioned there. However, it was mentioned in 2008. Dunnellon had to approve it with FCT approval. That's gone. So now if Marion County chose to add another commercial use to Blue Run Park, this would be within the ordinance to be able to do that. And I think that's really outrageous. That should not be in the ordinance. We have submitted, and you've seen it, I'm sure, and I've sent it to other council people, a replacement section 46-79. And I think one of the points about this is, if you come down and you sit on a weekend on a bench at Blue Run Park and you watch the operation down there, what you'll see is already the commercial use has overwhelmed the park. There's a bus coming every 10 maybe even every 5 minutes sometimes 2 at a time. The park has now become a commercial operation. Well, that's not what the management plan says. The primary objective of the management plan is to preserve the natural communities of Blue Run of Dunnellon Park for future generations, while providing natural resource-based recreation for visitors. The Florida Forever program is not a business program. It's a program for people to enjoy open space and the solitude of nature. That's what it's for. That's why people voted across Florida, 3/4 or 90% of the people to approve Florida Forever. It's not for business opportunities. So I would just make the point that freezing the number of liveries, which is in the interlocal agreement, we agree with that. There's no objection to that, whatever. It's been going on for 30 years, the KP shuttle. Let's freeze the number of livery operations in Blue Run Park to the one we have now. It's already overwhelming the park, but we agree to that. We know people have a right to use the river, and recreation is an important part of what people come to Dunnellon to do. But adding another commercial use to the park is not necessary. The river is already overused. If you talk to the other agencies, and if I have more time, I can give statements to you. What we're supposed to be doing with the management plan is complying with the mission statements and the goals of the other agencies, meaning the Aquatic Reserve, Swift Mud, and the statements I read through earlier. So by adding another livery, you're basically ignoring what the other agencies are trying to do, which is control the use on the river. Every park, and you know I'm in the park business for 35 years, every park has a carrying capacity. When the carrying capacity is reached, the park closes. Again and again, and whether you're going to Yellowstone or Allen Beach State Park where I was, or many other parks that I managed, when the park fills up, it's closed. That's it. So why keep adding more and more use to a park that's already over capacity? Yeah. And again, if you have a question about voting and approving this additional operation, go sit in the park on a weekend, Saturday or Sunday, and just watch what's going on.
Thank you, Mr. Bever. Thank you so much. The point that you made is true. Even currently, when the state park is full, it closes. And when KP Holes parking is full, it doesn't allow additional people to come in when they can't park. So it is done, and to think that the city is helpless that we can't do that with our own park, I don't think we're helpless. I think we just have allowed, for whatever reasons, we've allowed these things to happen, and it's time for us to step up to the plate and take charge. Is there anybody else that would like to speak?
Mr.
Yes.
Eno?
Oh, Dr. Eno?
He's taller than I am. Bert Eno, 9220 Southwest 193rd Circle. I'll speak as the president of RRC. I think that what Bill just said to you, which just told you, is the facts that we've been dealing with for a long time. I've been the president of RRC for 15 years, I think now. And I prefer to think I'm doing something right because I keep getting reelected. Either that or I'm the only fool there that worked this hard. But what Bill said was perfectly right. You're seeing that Blue Run Park is overused at the present time. I did write a email to all 5 of you council members this past week, and in it I quoted some remarks that are in the management plan, and I wanted just to remind you of those. This is strictly from the FCT approved management plan, and there it identifies 3 government entities that have direct interest in the management of the park. Those are the City of Dunnellon, Marion County, and the Office of Greenways and Trails. And management coordination needs to occur with these bodies, between these bodies. It also goes on to say in the next paragraph, management plan further states a management plan advisory committee consisting of representatives of the City of Dunnellon, Marion County Parks and Recreation, Rainbow Springs State Park, Rainbow Springs Aquatic Preserve, Office of Greenways and Trails, and Rainbow River Conservation Incorporated will be created and tasked to ensure the commitments presented are fulfilled. That has not been done, and I would encourage the city to set that up, do that, have meetings of that kind of a group. A lot of this debate that's been going on could have been cut short, I think, by having that kind of a committee operating. The last sentence of this section of the management plan states that commercial use of the property will be prohibited except by written agreement approved by the City of Dunnellon and FCT. And it also, that statement is also contained within the list of rules and regulations and policies approved by FCT. I wrote this because I saw where Rainbow River Kayak and Canoe was going to have 10 minutes to speak, or at least a chance to speak again about their proposed management plan. And I think Louise was right about calling it a business plan. It's for their benefit, and it shouldn't happen. I think it's totally out of place. It shouldn't have been on this agenda at all. And I think that it has nothing to do with the approval of the ordinance that you've been working on. They have no part in this. They are not partners to that ordinance. They simply have a role of working for the county to provide transportation for people who get through KP Hole onto the river with kayaks and tubes rented by KP Hole. The fact that they're going beyond that, I think, is illegitimate. I don't think it ought to be allowed. And I think they've overstepped their bounds, and I'm really getting sick of listening to Mr. Bassel. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Eno. Is there anyone else signed up for something?
Patrick Shepard. Left. Bonnie Walters. Liz Greco. I don't have anyone else.
All right.
I don't have anyone.
Yes, please, Chris, come on up. Please restate your name and address.
I don't cover near any of it, but Chris Anderson, 11463 North Waiver Street. So there's been a lot discussed tonight. First off, any future emails, Mandy, that have been sent to council concerning Blue Run Park, from any of the RRC members and such, I would like copies of those. Any of the recent ones especially. I've heard there's some kind words that were said about me and my organization, so I would just like to check those out. But a couple things here. Shuttle services have been approved by the city and FCT. The management plan that has been approved by FCT for the awarded grant funding for Blue Run Park says to provide a safer transfer point for the river users while also providing a parking in an area for shuttle services loading. All right. It doesn't say shuttle services is only allowed by the county. What has also been approved in writing by the city is resolution 2015-11, and I have not heard this really come up in any of the discussion, but it states that commercial use is prohibited except for drop-off and pickup by licensed city business tax receipt tube and kayak companies. That's me, and I'm not aware of any other ones that are licensed business tax receipt holders. I can't speak on behalf of any of the other companies that may be, unauthorized use, but as far as that's concerned, that's authorized. I mean, I don't know if there's any other ones that are out there. As far as the disallowable activities, that are mentioned in the grant contract, this is a private use test that's put out by the IRS to make that determination, and that has not been made yet. So there's a lot of things being talked about: commercial use, disallowable activities. A lot of that gets kind of thrown into one mix, and there's a use test that is done on these projects that are funded by certain bond proceeds in order to determine if those uses are disallowable. In addition, let me see here. I got, Mr. Hand, you had mentioned something about Uber and Lyft earlier. What was that? I couldn't quite understand that. Is that something that was going to be allowed in Blue Run Park or not?
Mr. Hand, a direct question to staff or council. I mean, I'll leave it up to you whether you want to
I just
answer
couldn't
that
hear
or
in the
not.
back of the room, and I wasn't sure what that.
I mean, if you want to
touched on it,
answer
but I
that,
just couldn't hear.
you don't have to answer direct questions from.
Well, I don't know who are council. I don't, however, whoever has to answer.
All right.
I don't have any issue answering it. What would be considered would be a exception from the commercial use definition for ride sharing and taxi cabs.
All right, because that's authorized or by the state. Is that,
It'd be unauthorized.
you said
It
unauthorized?
wouldn't be considered a commercial use.
You're saying that's a commercial use?
It would not be considered a commercial use.
Gotcha.
So it's not.
So, that's all I got for now.
Thank you, sir.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else who hasn't spoke, is done?
I just had a real quick comment. Kathy Dunn, 113 at 600 Drive. Is another thing we've really been putting up with in the city is speeding down Highway 41. And I'd like to see an effort to assess, are we going 35 or do we just need to increase the speed limit and be honest about it? Because I think it would make a big difference if we did enforce the 35 mile an hour speed limit. Plus, to me, moving that little walkover down, I think we should think bigger if possible and petition the state to put a bridge over 41 in anticipation of the Nine Island Cove Park. To bite between the two parks would be awesome. So that's just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Anyone else?
I would remind anyone in Zoom, if you want to speak, this will be your last opportunity, and you must raise your hand if you would like to do so.
No one? Before we adjourn, I want to compliment council on, we covered a tremendous amount of items tonight, and I think we stayed very much on task, and we kind of plowed through it. Job well done. Do we have a motion to
See ya.
second?
We don't do motions on.
Oh, that's right. I keep doing that. Yeah,
Oh, keep saying see ya. Yeah, I'm gonna get my chicken pot pie.